Okay, welcome to L2L Locker Room, Episode 1. Today I will be reviewing some foundational fat loss foods. L2L stands for Line Man to Lean Man. Let's dive in. I got a little PowerPoint presentation today, really aiming to help you get healthy, right? Okay, so let's dive in, right? First of all, I'd like to introduce who I am. Maybe you haven't seen my content before. A lot of who watches it are people who know me or have seen my things before. So if you've seen it before, you find it valuable, it would be great if you could share it. I'm not somebody who is currently pushed heavily by the algorithm, and that is okay, right? The algorithm pushes people who they can control. So again, who am I? Health coach and researcher. I'm somebody who's tried almost all the diets that I not necessarily dispel, but I'm just here to advocate for improved health. I believe if we have improved health as individuals, we can then tap into really what we are called to do. We can really dive deep into our intuition and figure out what we are here on earth to do. Right. Many of us know that it's within, but if you're constantly focused on improving your health, it can be very difficult to really follow through on what you know you should be doing. So let's improve your health, right? Who do I work with? I work with a lot of former athletes who are aiming to lose weight. I myself was a former offensive lineman. I played college football at University at Buffalo. I also coached college football at Widener College. I was tight ends coach, JV head coach, assistant O-line coach. I've been a high school strength and conditioning coach. I have been a personal trainer and strength conditioning coach for many athletes. And then I was a wildland firefighter. So what do I do currently, right? I work with former athletes in hopes to lose weight. That's what I did. I lost over 80 pounds. Now I look like this guy. Used to be a lot bigger, right? So it is not only a physical transformation, but really mental. And I really aim to help people with that as well, right? There's much more. You're breaking habits, right? Then you have habits of maybe eating excessive amounts of food, or maybe not knowing how to time it up, and not really talking about yourself in a positive manner, which I think is extremely important. When you have negative self-talk, you tend to follow through on those negative words that you say about yourself. So always really be mindful of what follows when you say I am. Okay. But I work with former athletes, many former Division I professional high school athletes, and aims to lose weight. I also work with current athletes. I work with professional athletes in football, in mixed martial arts. I work with other people, powerlifters, bodybuilders, and many different types of athletes who have who have a staff or at least a person dedicated to just nutrition. But what I do, and you're going to see in this video, is a little bit different of a perspective, right? I don't have stated on here that I'm a nutritionist, even though I am, because I've had to unlearn a lot of the things that I was taught to become a nutritionist. So a lot of the current people in the healthcare industry, you're going to see a lot of certifications. And when you're really looking to help improve health from this perspective, which I would argue is bioenergetic, it's a pro-metabolic perspective, you have to unlearn a lot of the things that many people were taught, whether it's in medical school, becoming a dietitian, for myself, becoming a nutritionist. But I dove into this over 12 years ago. I really became obsessed with it. I wanted to improve my health. I wanted to improve health of people around me. I had many family members who were dealing with and are still dealing with health issues. And my goal, after seeing that they were not helped from the current medical system, was to help myself get healthy and help other people get healthy again, so they can live a fulfilling life and do what they're meant to do. So aside from that, right, helping people lose weight, helped over 40 people, probably over 50 people now, lose over 30 pounds. Okay, many people I help is transformational coaching. So it is not only, I love helping anybody, really, any motivated motivated individuals. I love helping, but I help a lot of people who are really looking to transform their health, to shed their past identity of maybe being a lineman, being a quote unquote bigger person. And it's a process, but it's completely doable. And currently in the medical industry, the main way to circumvent this problem, which I believe is a metabolic problem, tends to be through appetite suppressing drugs. And I don't believe those are solving the root cause, the root issue. I tend to go down a lot of different per se rabbit holes. And really what the aim of that is to get to the root, which always truth, right? So we're looking for truth here. And then I aim to share that truth with you. Of course, I'm always consistently learning. So things I don't understand or maybe didn't know, I will make sure to, in the future, mention that. But let's move on. So the agenda today, I want to review some macronutrients, right? There's only 3 of them, and that would be protein, carbs, and fats, the importance of each one, what micronutrients can be found within those macronutrients, and from there going through when to time up the macronutrients. So when to time up what foods you're eating. A lot of people will just go throughout the day, deem they're eating healthy, but they don't know the macronutrients they're eating, let alone the micronutrients, let alone the importance of the timing that they consume said food. So we're going to review that. From there, some basics of food quality, followed by a Q&A where I'll answer some questions about raw milk, creatine, post-concussion nutrition, and a few other things. So I'm excited to talk about those as well. I have some good notes to review. Okay, so let's dive in. So always want to mention not all calories are created equal, right? A lot of times people will try to circumvent that statement. They will say, Jack, what about the study where people ate 1,000 calories of Twinkies versus 1,000 calories of this, and they both, lost the same amount of weight? There are many different ingredients within food that can be very much a net negative the longer you eat them. Something you'll hear me and my clients have heard me say consistently are the negative effects of polyunsaturated fats on your metabolism and overall health. Of course, there's many books I have somewhere behind me. Dr. Broder Barnes goes in detail, Hans Selye, Michael Polanyi, and many others. Ray Peat discuss the issues of these fats, but I'll aim to briefly describe that so you can have that in a digestible manner, because digestion is very important for fat loss. But again, you're going to see here, this is a meal I just had recently, actually. So I don't always eat starches all the time. Starches have a lot of different components to food, but starches are a category of carbohydrates. You're going to see here some eggs, some carrots. I have some fish here. I believe this was some haddock at the time. Some sliced tomatoes, which I prefer to have cooked, but I didn't want them to go bad, so I ate them with some, you just see some salt on there too. And some dates. Dried dates, great source of boron, help reduce your SHBG and help you improve some free testosterone if you're a male. For females, testosterone is also important. That's how estrogen is created. Estrogen is also important, which we don't want too much of. We'll discuss that. Okay, so we want to rebuild your metabolism. Many times, if you're watching this and if you're interested in weight loss, chances are your metabolism is probably not in the standing that we would want it to be lean, or else you'd probably be lean. Because if you're watching this, chances are you've tried to lose weight before. It is not for the lack of trying, right? You've probably attempted this before and things have not happened as you would have wished, and you are still aiming to lose fat. So I want to help you lose fat in a way that you can improve your metabolism. This is me after I've improved my metabolism. It used to be very difficult for me to get lean while still feeling energetic and feeling very strong and vital, high libido. That's something that's for men is so important. I think that is many times discussed, right? TRT, we want to replace our hormones with bioidentical hormones. But the argument here, again, for metabolism, which really has to do with your thyroid, is if we improve your metabolic health, testosterone will, as a byproduct, be improved, will raise. Many times it even doubles in people. Okay, mine used to be well under 200. Now it's well over 800. And I do not inject any testosterone. Okay, I have improved my metabolism. I take thyroid hormone, and that helps tremendously because in my scenario, I had a downregulated or a slow metabolism to the point where I had tumors and very much a fibrotic thyroid. That's what creates your thyroid hormone. Thyroid hormone, you're going to hear me consistently talk about this. Jack, why is thyroid so important? Well, your thyroid, namely your active component of thyroid, T3, is in all cells of your body. And it is really the fat loss hormone. You're going to see many lean influencers talking to you about losing weight. What they will not mention to you a lot of times is they're taking drugs to help lose fat. Not only steroids, but they're taking stimulants such as clenbuterol, which is going to help you burn body fat, but also thyroid hormone. This is something I take. I'm going to be transparent here. Okay. Once again, I need to take it. My thyroid before taking it was very poor. My health was extremely poor. So again, I'm not saying it haphazardly, just hop on this, but many people, if you look into Dr. Broder Barnes and his work, more than 40% of the population back in the 1950s was on thyroid hormone and was hypothyroid. Food also included thyroid. And again, this was when the population was much leaner. Thyroid hormone is extremely important. It raises your basal metabolic rate. It allows you to use more carbohydrates as energy. And that's really what we want. That is what this viewpoint, and again, looking for truth in health, is how do we have a proper functioning metabolism? And carbohydrates are going to be pivotal. Okay. So you're going to see me emphasize this a lot, but let's dive in. Okay. So some simple fat loss tips just to begin, right? If you're not somebody who's used to tracking food, I would recommend that. It's just something I'll have some people do, right? Depending on who they are, right? Especially maybe older people or women or people who've tried to lose weight for a long time. Let's just start on tracking your food. Let's get a food log going. How about you track it? And the cool thing about starting to track your food is you realize what you are taking in and you change that before anyone tells you to change it. I don't like being told what to do. I'm going to be honest with you here. So maybe you're the same as me. Maybe you've been drawn to this video because you like to have autonomy. And a great way to start improving your health while being autonomous is tracking your food, is seeing, oh, I'm having X amount of calories throughout the day. I'm having X amount of fat, X amount of protein, X amount of carbs, X amount of vitamin C. You start to see what you're intaking. That's why I do recommend Chronometer. That's what I use personally. The gold version is cool because it allows you to see a lot of the micronutrients, which you are probably spending exorbitant amounts of money buying, right? Again, this is an industry. A health industry wants you consistently buying things. Instead of buying said supplement, what if you just ate it? That's going to be a lot of the theme for today. Along with that, weighing your food is going to help you really track your foods to a pinpoint level. Of course, this is not have to be a lifetime thing. You don't have to, I'm not tracking my food today. Look at me, and I'm losing weight. It doesn't have to be done. But if you're starting to build a relationship, maybe you're not like me who started tracking food when he was 15 and now he's 27 years old. So for 12 years, on and off, I've been tracking food. I can tell you what 6 ounces of meat looks like or 200 grams of potatoes, X, Y, Z. So I have a relationship. I can kind of pinpoint and visualize how much of said micronutrients and macronutrients on my plate. But one thing that's very difficult to track is fat intake. And I'm going to really try to explain why that's so important, not only because it has more calories, but many of these fats can slow your metabolism, meaning now you have to eat less to burn body fat. The whole argument here, what we want to be doing is improving our metabolism, meaning we are eating more food to lose more fat. Let me say that again. We are eating more food, namely carbohydrates and specific micronutrients, to burn more fat. So rather than starving yourself, being in a stress state and your body thinks it is starving to death, so it's losing a lot of muscle and a lot of fat as well, and maybe even some bone. Rather than that, let's give your body enough energy to be healthy. Your body does not, in a healthy state, does not want to be extraordinarily fat. It probably doesn't want to be 5% body fat, but it definitely doesn't want to be 30%. So in a healthy body, 10 to 15% body fat for a male is completely doable by improving metabolism. Okay, right, that takes time. Weighing your food, weighing in daily, seeing the relationship that what your habits do will impact your weight. Steps and sleep will be tremendously beneficial for weight loss without touching food. A lot of people, man, oh man, like I've got clients and they're like, Jack, I haven't lost food in 3 days. Should I decrease my food? Like, no, your average step count is at 6,000 and your average sleep is at 5.8 hours. Okay. Step count, that's our non-exercise activity thermogenesis, is pivotal for lipolysis, the process of burning fat. Again, I like to look at people who are successful. So past populations of very lean people who didn't do an extraordinary amount of exercise, right? They weren't, people in their 30s weren't just fucking weightlifting all the time and doing Pilates 24/7. No, they were active individuals who walked around a lot and didn't eat a lot of these polyunsaturated processed foods. And they slept. In our culture today, is fucking don't sleep, work hard as you can, stay up on your phone, do all of these things. That's not something I'm going to be advocating for today. Take time to be relaxed. Take time to sleep, right? If we don't have time to eat quality food and sleep, are we just a slave? Like, what are we? If we don't have to, like, I hope somebody hears me on this, but if we don't have time to eat healthy food and sleep, what are we doing? Like, aren't these fundamentals of life not, let alone that during sleep, that's when we have our largest releases of growth hormone. Again, this is why performance enhancing athletes take growth hormone before bed. It helps you go to sleep. That is when it's released naturally. That's why there's a lot of these GH secretagogue peptides that are taken before bed. Again, you don't have to do these things, but by having 7, 8, 9 hours of sleep, you will have improved hormone function. Of course, when you sleep less than 6 hours, you're probably not going to wake up with an erection. If you don't wake up with an erection, probably go back to bed. Okay. You should be waking up. That is very important. I cannot repeat that enough to people. And it's very counterintuitive, but you need to be waking up with an erection. It's very important. It's very important for blood flow. It's very important for health. It's a very important indicator of testosterone in men. So I have that even on here. I forget to sometimes read this. Temp and heart rate should rise after meals. Okay. When you're waking up, this is something I have clients do as well to track metabolism. Again, this comes from Broda Barnes, right? Hypothyroidism, the Unsuspected Illness would be a fantastic book for you to read if you're interested. And what is this guy talking about thyroid and metabolism all the time? Well, look into this literature from the 1940s, 50s, 60s. It was written in the 70s. Great book. But your waking temp should be 97.8 to 98.2. Probably seems a little bit high. Most of you probably have a little bit lower than that if you even take it. Some people with Oura rings, mainly women, will take it. More women have hypothyroidism than men, so do take note of that. Maybe your loved ones have it. Many of mine do. This is, again, why it's so important to me. I've dove down this rabbit hole because, again, these have impacted me. Fat loss and thyroid and metabolism have impacted me tremendously, which is why I've studied them and spent exorbitant amounts of money, at least for me, tens of thousands of dollars on medical care and studies, and scans and courses and coaches and programs and books, all these different things, right? So heart rate should be 75 to 90 upon waking. Whoa, Jack, that is freaking high. Brian Johnson, Peter Attia, who was in the Epstein files, who probably rapes kids, he told me to have it be in the 40s. Well, that would be a sign of a low metabolism. Your body is trying to become way more efficient, so it is reducing the amount of blood flow, the amount of beats. We don't want to be doing that. But I thought if I have a high VO2 max, do you know how many people, marathon runners, triathlon runners, these distance people die of heart attacks, die of cardiac diseases? No bueno. We don't want to be doing that. Okay. I kind of think of long distance cardio as masochistic. I used to do it as well. Again, many of these viewpoints I have came to from trying them out and eventually realizing they weren't the best for me. Again, you do as you may. But temp and heart rate, very important. Your temperature after meals, especially during the day, should be well over 98.6. If you're at 99, congratulations, you are a metabolic monster, and your body heats up. It's very, very helpful for losing body fat. So again, be mindful of your temperature upon waking, 97.8 to 98.2, heart rate 75 to 90 beats per minute. Okay, continuing on. All right, let's talk about some carbohydrates, right? I'm drinking some bone broth right now, salted, tastes so good. Okay, carbohydrates, right? Orange juice, which I also have on hand. I kind of categorize carbohydrates in a simple manner. First of all, we're talking about sole carbohydrate sources. So you might be thinking, Jack, you're telling me carbs are good? I eat donuts and I feel fat. Well, ma'am or sir, donuts are not a carbohydrate. They are a mixed food source. I'm talking about sole, single ingredient, whole food sources in the category carbohydrates can be simple or starchy. Now, simple carbohydrates have low amounts of fiber. They're easy to digest for most people. And fruit or juice tends to have 50% fructose, 50% sucrose. These are very important for your liver. Your liver, again, I'm going to come back to thyroid here, is where T4, which gets created in your thyroid, it's the inactive version that many people are on. Maybe you're taking Synthroid, levothyroxine, you're taking T4, the inactive version, but it gets converted in the body. 70% or more happens in the liver. And you need glucose, you need liver glycogen for that. So, ladies and gentlemen, when we want to improve metabolism, we want to improve easily digestible, we want to intake easily digestible carbohydrates to provide fuel for the liver to then create the hormones that then burn our body fat. Now, there's going to be some nuances there because there's something called a Randle cycle. And if we have a ton of high fat meals or a lot of fat with these high carbs, it can cause some issues. And then we can't use those carbohydrates as effectively. And we might even store them as adipose tissue, which is somewhat difficult. Okay. There's a process for that, de novo lipogenesis, where you turn carbohydrates to fat. That's something we don't want to have happening. So, when we have a lot of carbohydrates, we can just pull our intake of fats downward. That's going to be very helpful to improve metabolism, allow for more T3 to be created, which then helps create testosterone. Okay. But also going to be very important. It's very hard to store that as adipose tissue. When we intake fat, it is a lot easier to store fat as fat because it's basically in its storage. It's ready to be stored. Protein, it's ready to be stored. Carbohydrates, they are fuel. And when it combusts in our body and we create CO2, then we have more oxygen, we feel better, we have more energy. So carbohydrates are fundamental. Simple carbohydrates especially. If you're somebody who's waning off of a carnivore, keto, intermittent fasting, adding in some simple carbohydrates throughout the day, whether it's some orange juice, some maple syrup, some raw honey, some good fruit without the skin that digests well is highly recommended for improving metabolism. Of course, white sugar, great as well. Okay. Easy to digest fruit. Tropical fruits seem to digest the best. They have the least amount of starches within them. And then you can kind of stew or cook down apples, berries. I did this a lot in the fall with apples. Fantastic. Now, these simple carbohydrates, funny enough, actually spike your insulin less. They have a lower glycemic index than a lot of these starches. So if you have a food like a bagel compared to an orange juice, the bagel has to be assimilated ASAP. Now, if the liver, right, maybe liver glycogen, you got a decent amount, you got enough, your muscles are saturated. Well, now we have more of a likelihood of storing that as body fat. So having starches or these foods that need to be assimilated quickly because they have a higher insulin spike should be had probably around training or around activity. Keep that in mind. Okay, right? Also, a lot of these starches may have gluten, may have other things that can cause a little bit of bloating, digestional distress. And if we have issues with digestion, endotoxin will be leaked from the intestine, which is permeable. It's not just a flat tube. Okay, there's a mesh tube if you want to think of your intestine. I'm kind of a visual / vibe learner. I need to be learning from people who have good vibes, and I need to kind of visualize things. So when you're visualizing, okay, right, maybe you've seen all those pipes that have all the water. That's not really your intestine. Your intestine is more like those mesh jungle gyms that your foot can fall through. And that's where the endotoxin goes through. And when digestion is slowed, guess what? These toxins start leaking out all throughout the body. Okay. And before you know it, there's a lot of issues. And these endotoxins they will cause increases in other hormones called histamine, serotonin, estrogen, and namely estrogen will even inhibit the conversion of T4 to T3 in the liver. So that's very important to consider. That's also why orange juice and raw carrots are so fundamental for improving your metabolism because they're anti-estrogenic. So some carbohydrates that might be helpful for you that have a lower likelihood of causing bloating and endotoxin release would be some potatoes with no skin. I like to mix these with the saturated fat source. Typically, having a starch with a saturated fat doesn't have to be a large amount due to the Randle cycle I explained. Coconut oil would be a great choice, or grass-fed butter, a ghee, or a tallow. Those are probably my top 4 Mountain Rushmore of added fats. So, jasmine rice is my favorite rice. That's something, or sushi rice. It's a little bit of a tongue twister. Those are both good, helpful to digest with starches as well. I like having rice and fish. I feel like that's very much a very quality meal, right? Red meat and potatoes. Sometimes having meals and then testing your temperature afterwards. See what meals increase your temperature the most. That means you're probably digesting them well and they're not causing a stress response. Okay. Something to also note is if your temperature and heart rate goes down following a meal, you are probably running off of stress hormones. So your temperature and heart rate were actually artificially elevated due to cortisol, adrenaline. And then when you had food, those stress hormones came down. Why, Jack? Why do these stress hormones get released? But how does this happen? Well, stress hormones are released in the body when the liver runs out of glycogen. So again, if we're on a intermittent fasting, keto, carnivore, low carbohydrate approach, we tend to run a lot off of cortisol and adrenaline. I can speak from experience. I have tumors on my kidneys probably from doing this for a long time. So again, I've made these mistakes and I'm pleading to you to try a different way. Maybe it'll help for you. I do think it will. So that would be the advice. But again, the liver runs out of glycogen. It sends out a stress response. Then it takes protein out of your muscles. It converts that into carbohydrates via a process called gluconeogenesis. In this process, ammonia is released. The energy is not nearly as efficient as just using glucose oxidation, but ammonia is released. Energy is still had somewhat within the body, and ammonia blocks our deadenase enzymes, which are very important for the creation of T4 in our thyroid. So, using protein for energy, a lot of people will say, just do that. Well, it's going to slow down your metabolism more. So now you have to eat less and less and less. And then maybe you'll take a GLP and you'll get lean. And then when you get off the GLP and you don't reduce fats and you keep carbs high, you'll gain weight. So I don't recommend doing that. Okay. Oat bran is another one I like in the morning. It's a little bit better than oatmeal. It has a bit of a different texture to it. It digests a little bit easier. So that can be helpful. Do be cautious of the quality of your starches. Again, these can be soaked in a lot of pesticides and herbicides. So do be careful of that. Masa harina is another quality one that's made with lime. That's corn made with lime. That's a Mexican practice. It's very good. It's a solid option. Sourdough can work for people. Just do be cautious of the quality. Food quality, tremendously important. Now, things like oats or wheat might have glyphosate or other pesticides. Sourdough might just be labeled incorrectly. It might be labeled as sourdough, but it might have many other things than a traditional sourdough should. Traditional sourdough should only have flour, yeast, starter, water, salt. Doesn't really need much. Again, slow digestion does cause a slow fat loss. Slow digestion can lead to things like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And of course, we do not want to be having that. That's when you have a lot of bloating, specifically in the lower GI, maybe around the belly button. Very uncomfortable. Antibiotics can help with that. But SIBO is very common with people with low thyroid function. Low thyroid function means you have less GI motility. You have lower amounts of bowel movements per day. We want to be having 2 to 3 bowel movements. We really want to have a bowel movement after every large meal. That's pretty common for a healthy individual. Of course, walking after meals will help with digestion, but we'll continue to some carbohydrate micronutrients. So now, every food I intake or I give somebody to eat, I view really as a supplement. So like, why do I have orange juice? Well, I'm gonna tell you X, Y, Z. Or why do I have this or that? There's always a reason. So when you're eating things, view your foods as a supplement, and the chances of you needing supplements will probably come down. So would highly recommend viewing food as a supplement. But again, let's look over some micronutrients that are within carbohydrates. First, magnesium. Why is it important? Well, it's going to help you absorb calcium. Very important. Sleep, bowels, and cramps. It's an electrolyte. It's one of the 4 main electrolytes, along with sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium. Very important as electrolytes. Where do you get them? Coffee. Whoa. Whoa. Coffee's actually great. It's in the evening, so I'm not drinking any right now. I wish I was. I only had 1 cup today. That's a low amount for me. I typically have 3 to 4. Again, dark chocolate, another good source of magnesium. Fruit, bone broth, which I'm sipping on. Epsom salt, another great one. Take some Epsom salt baths. Boost your metabolism that way. CO2 as well. Okay. Potassium. Why is potassium important, Jack? Well, do you want your nerves and cells to function? I think so. It's also a glucose disposal agent. A lot of people will use berberine to help with fat loss, to help dispose of glucose. What if you could just drink orange juice all day that's rich in potassium? And that would dispose of it. What if the foods with glucose had potassium and they dispose of they actually dispose of the glucose? That's probably good food to eat. Okay. It works like insulin to shuttle sugar into cells because again, in an individual individual like myself, I probably hold 600 to 800 grams of carbs, if not more. You hold 150 to 200 grams of carbs just in your liver, and then all your muscle holds carbohydrates. So a lot of people are like creatine increases ATP, and I'll talk about that later. But again, creatine is just helping bring water and ATP into the cell, and we can actually improve metabolism and have way better muscle function. And deficiency of potassium is linked to diabetes. Slow metabolism is linked to diabetes, I would argue. But again, you're going to get in orange juice, fruit, potatoes, bamboo shoots are another solid option. Those are one I probably should start using. I haven't used before, so I can't proclaim them to be the best, but I've heard a lot of good things from Ray Pete, Kate Deering, people of that sort, Danny Roddy. Okay, sodium. Sodium is fundamentally anti-stress, along with sugar. It's going to reduce your cortisol and adrenaline. That's going to allow your body to work properly and not damage your system. It's going to increase your metabolism. There's a reason wars were fought over sodium back in the day, so we're told. My bone broth is salty, I'll tell you that. Okay, increases metabolism. It's going to maintain blood pressure and blood volume, very important. It's going to alleviate constipation. Sometimes I'll just have people have a tablespoon of salt throughout the day, and constipation will be damn near solved. Very much helpful. Again, you have muscles that cause peristalsis around your intestines. So these muscles, which need salt, just like your biceps when you're lifting or your legs, if you're an athlete, you need salt to perform and for those muscles to flex, you need those around your intestines to flex and push the food through. So if you don't have enough sodium in your diet, it will not push food through your intestine. And of course, you also need sugar in those muscles. So sugar and salt will allow digestion to improve. Very counterintuitive. Again, it's the quality that matters here, not just a bunch of freaking donuts. Okay. Alleviates constipation, improves the immune function as well. I like to use Morton's canning and pickling salt. That's probably the best quality salt I've seen. Most sea salt does have issues with heavy metals or microplastics or both. Vitamin B1. This is one I do supplement with, just because of the the tremendous effects of you're going to see the B vitamins are tremendously impactful. The cool things you can get them from food, but supplementing with thiamine, especially in the morning with high carb meal, can be a pretty cool adjunct to improving your metabolism and fat loss. Again, it's going to break down sugar and amino acids, so that's very important. It's needed to form neurotransmitters. Again, very important here. Acetylcholine and GABA specifically, both important here. And it will boost your metabolism. You can get that in coffee. What do you know? Coffee is actually a superfood or food that I would consume every day. I guess foods I consume every day I would deem a superfood. Either way, potatoes also have B1, liver and eggs. Also, using Chronometer, you will click the food you had, and then you can see the micronutrients, and you can see why you should have them or what foods you should have. Again, give you autonomy rather than just taking supplements at a wide scale, wasting your money, and then feeling like shit. I've been there. Don't want to be that way. All right. Vitamin B6. It's going to break down amino acids in the intestines. That's going to be important, right? We want to be able to break down these amino acids. We have enzymes like protease, very important for breaking down amino acids and using them. It's not only about putting food in your body, but it's about breaking it down and assimilating it, right? If we just consume these things that these rappers say they have, like the actual nutrition labels, not freaking Lil Wayne, these nutrition labels say they have, but if you can't actually absorb them and utilize them, and they don't decrease your stress, well, then I would argue it's probably not going to be very helpful for your health goals. So, right, it's going to break down the amino acids in the intestines. It's also going to support the immune system. You're going to get that in bananas, carrots, liver, eggs, meat. You're going to see liver, eggs, and meat, especially liver and eggs, very, very foundational fat loss foods. The vitamin C, right, it's going to help with growth and repair of tissue. It supports the immune system. A lot of people love to take emergency. Look at the ingredients in there. We don't really want a lot of those, but orange juice would be a great option. Red peppers, red bell peppers, those are the ripest versions. So I do say they have those: papaya, pineapple, kiwi, watermelon, potatoes. So as you can see here, fundamental fat loss carbohydrates, coffee, orange juice, fruit, potatoes. Okay, potatoes again, bananas, carrots, orange juice, peppers, papaya, pineapple, kiwi, watermelon, potatoes. A lot of other fruits and some other well-cooked vegetables do have some good quality micronutrients as well. So I hope that kind of makes sense for the micros and macros of carbohydrates. Now, protein. Everyone likes to ask me, right? Freaking, they hop on a call. A lot of people who want to work with me, right, will hop on a Zoom call, make sure we both get along, because that's important, right? You don't want to be working with somebody if they don't fuck with me, they don't enjoy talking to me. You probably don't want to work with me. That's okay. I'm the same. I want to be getting along with people I help. But when we hop on a call, it's always like, dude, how much protein should we have, man? Now, protein is important. Don't get me wrong, right? I don't mean to be a protein hater. I do consume protein, but I think it's oftentimes over focused on the quality of the proteins, oftentimes either low or inflammatory. And I'll go into that. But estimate your goal lean body weight and probably eat that much in protein. Okay. You don't have to overcomplicate it. Now, the cool thing about carbohydrates is they're protein sparing. What does that mean, Jack? Well, protein sparing means when you have adequate carbohydrates, that your liver does not have to create a stress signal to then go pull protein from your muscle, bring it back, convert it into glucose. It's protein sparing. Carbohydrates, having adequate amounts of carbohydrates, spare your protein from being pulled out of your muscle and used as energy. So rather, they're used in your muscle, they're used to create enzymes in your body, they're used for joints and all those different, right? Every different amino acid really has a different role. Again, so there's 20 amino acids. They all have different roles within your body, but they're very important. And using them as carbs is not something you want to do. So having adequate carbs spares those proteins from being used as energy. That's why it's important. Okay, let's continue. Varying the protein sources. This is something I do recommend, hence why I'm drinking bone broth after I just had Greek yogurt, and I'll probably have eggs or shrimp later. Different sources of proteins helpful. A lot of people want to just spam muscle meat, and then they tell me, man, I feel constipated. Like I had a few guys, pro athletes recently, and they're eating like 12 to 16 ounces of meat per meal, 4 to 6 meals a day. Holy shit. You're not going to be able to digest all that. And you're like, well, what about Ronnie Coleman and Chad Nichols? All right, take a step back here. I'm not working with individuals who are taking those PEDs, but they're those bodybuilders who can eat that much food, again, are taking thyroid hormone. Now, how does this relate, Jack, to protein? How does thyroid relate to protein? Well, we have different amino acids within protein, like I mentioned. There's 20 of them, and some of them are inflammatory. And when we have a lot of muscle meats, they have high amounts of certain amino acids. So if we're having a ton of steak and a ton of lean chicken breast, I say muscle meat, that's what I'm talking like a filet, chicken breast, the non-collagen collagen type like thing. So chuck roast would be a little different, or eggs is different, but just purely muscle meats, right? They have inflammatory amino acids, as it says here, cysteine, methionine, tryptophan, namely a few that will slow and inhibit thyroid function. Now we have less T3, we have less thyroid function, we have less testosterone, fat loss will be harder. So, and you can track that in chronometer. So you can track that yourself, and you can be like, whoa, I only need 3 grams a day or 5 grams a day of tryptophan, and I had 17. Well, that's going to slow down your metabolism. That's going to make fat loss harder. So now we can maybe rethink how we want to take in protein. Okay, I hope that makes sense here. So we're going to strategically use our protein sources to hit our protein goal. Maybe for me, I'm 235 and I'm eating 200 grams of protein a day to 220. So I'm eating less than a pound. I'm still eating adequate amounts. I'm not under eating protein, but you could theoretically eat less than that. I theoretically could eat 120 grams of protein a day. I've ate up to double my body weight. I was 225. I've ate 450 a day, 450 grams of protein a day for many months on end. So once again, I've tried this. I feel actually better, more of a pump, stronger eating this much protein or less. I've done as low as 150 before. Either way, view each protein source as a micronutrient source, right? They contain calcium, choline, B1, B2, B3, B5, B6, B7, B9, B12, vitamin D, vitamin A, actually retinol, not beta carotene, vitamin E, vitamin K, zinc, copper, selenium, iron. So be mindful of the calcium to phosphate ratio. This is something Ray Pete talked about pretty extensively. Georgie Dinkoff and others spoke about this as well. But this is going to be important. Hence why having calcium with red meat can be really helpful, because red meat has a lot of phosphate and a lot of iron. So calcium helps with that. Having shellfish often would also be something that I recommend. And collagen and gelatin type proteins, probably daily. Easy way to sneak that in with some coffee. Mix in some collagen with coffee in the morning or some Greek yogurt bowl. easy way to get in some collagen. Again, that's high in glycine, different amino acids that are very helpful for your metabolism. Let's continue. Okay, so my favorite protein sources, you're going to see milk at the top. Now, for fat loss, I have lean milk. I'm not against whole milk, but we are looking to get lean for the summer, baby. So we want probably a little bit lower fat. Again, milk as a whole has all the macronutrients. So it's a growth food, right? There's a reason babies are given milk because they are trying to grow. So it's a growth food. It's going to help you get lean and healthy, and reducing the fat will help be a fat growth food rather a muscle growth food. Aside from that, low-fat Greek yogurt and cottage cheese are helpful. They do have a little bit more inflammatory amino acids, so be mindful of how you feel when eating those foods, but good sources of calcium as well, which is very important for fat loss. Parmesan cheese, very important. Again, this is a supplementary type food, so eating a ton of Parmesan cheese when you're looking to lose weight wouldn't be something I recommend. But if you're having very lean protein sources, maybe a filet or a top round steak or shrimp and fish, then Parmesan cheese is a quality fat source. Fat source. Okay, eggs, again, another fat source with protein in them. Liver, foundational B vitamin source, along with copper and vitamin A, retinol. Oysters, mineral dense, very helpful for your thyroid. Again, you're going to see I'm naming all these foods, but they have real reasons behind them. Whitefish, very lean, also has good B6 and other vitamins, B3. Shrimp, zinc is very important for testosterone function. A lot of people want to supplement with zinc, but supplements, as I'll talk about later, are not always extremely pure or helpful. So I prefer to get them through whole foods. From there, lean ruminant meat. Ruminant animals are animals with 4 stomachs. Why is this important, Jack? Who gives a damn how many stomachs the animal has? Well, in current harvesting of animals, they are typically fed cheap options to maintain their high body weight, which allows these people to profit off of the animal. But these animals are fed very poor quality foods for the most part, unless you go into a local farm, which I highly recommend. Buy everything local, know the people you're buying from. But if you're not doing that, lean ruminant animals is important because their body fat a lot of times is where they store a lot of those toxins. So if you're having like high fat single stomach animals like chicken or pork, chances are you're getting a lot more of the toxic foods they're eating, like polyunsaturated fats. And the food labels have not changed in many, many decades. So if they retest them now, that might be even a different thing than what's actually said on the label. And the labels only have to be within 10, 20% accuracy. So again, I wouldn't necessarily always trust those, which is why I like the lean ruminant animals. Polyunsaturated fats slow your metabolism, bind to your thyroid, reduce the amount of T3, reduce the amount of fat burn you can have. So eating a lot of these PUFAs through animal fat, not something I recommend. Ruminant animals have 4 stomachs. They can process these fats better, and they reduce the amount that's in your food. So it'll be, again, better for your metabolism to eat these. Because again, I'm not here to tell you what are the hacks to not eat anything. It's actually, hey, what can you eat and what can you eat a lot of to feel energetic, feel horny, feel like you're having great digestion, great skin, great hair, great nails. And as a byproduct of feeling great and highly energetic, you get lean. So being lean should be a byproduct of improving your health. So this video is about improving your health. Okay, bone broth, like I mentioned, different amino acids, very much low in the inflammatory amino acids, methionine, tryptophan, cysteine, and others. Collagen and gelatin powder, I like Great Lakes. I have no affiliation with any brands, but Great Lakes is a solid brand I use. It actually mixes well, like a lot of collagens don't. Be mindful when you're looking at supplements, the ingredient list. A lot of them will have gums, silicone dioxides, and other things that are very much things that humans don't want to be consuming. So I don't recommend you consume those. So be mindful of that. Great Lakes gelatin is a solid brand. Then potatoes do have protein. You can survive on potatoes only. Okay. So protein micronutrients. Let's dive in, right? Now we understand the importance of protein. Creates enzymes within your body, creates muscle, helps support skin, hair, and nails, all these different things, right? It's a lot of the building blocks of the body. Now we have enough carbohydrates where we're using actually protein for those things, not using protein for energy. We're not doing this gluconeogenesis bullshit. It's always happening, actually, but we're not using that a lot. So we're reducing our stress hormones. Now we have less stress hormones. So now our thyroid can work properly. Now we have enough carbohydrates in the liver, so then the liver can create enough T3. And now our metabolism is starting to increase. We're starting to get stronger, but we want to have quality proteins that don't upset our thyroid to allow us to continue to lose fat. So what would these micronutrients be? How do we get them? Let's talk about it. Vitamin A, retinol, right? You might hear vitamin A and you think beta carotene. That's in carrots. That's in sweet potatoes. Sorry, that is incorrect. You have to have that with a red meat, typically a B12, to then kind of make that into the active form retinol, or you can just get it in retinol form via said foods, beef, liver, milk, eggs, cheese. What does it do? It allows for growth, immune function, vision, healthy skin. This is how it's marketed, right? You might see retinol creams, very commonly marketed. Again, you can eat your skincare. Now, a lot of people talk about this online. There's a lady called Andrea. She talks about naturopathic stuff. Veronica, who does she has a skincare brand. A lot of people talk about eating your skincare, eating your hydration, right? These are things we can do rather than buying supplements for electrolytes, supplements for skin. What if we just actually ate the nutrients, assimilated them, and felt great? Okay, let's continue. I hope my skin looks okay. I swear it feels good. I do eat beef liver. Okay, and milk and cheese and eggs. Again, I want to practice what I preach here. So I'm not here to tell you to eat some shit and then I'm not eating it. That would be very, I don't know, facetious, I suppose. Okay, vitamin B2 or riboflavin. That's going to be utilized for fat, protein, ketones. Whoa, yes, ketones are always in effect within the body, even though we're not necessarily running solely off of them. They're always being, you're always technically have aspects of ketones, ketosis going on. Carbohydrate metabolism. Okay, B12, and I mean, not B12, I'm talking about B2, but all B vitamins are super important for your metabolism. Critical. Okay, so when you're looking at chronometer, you're tracking your vitamins, be cautious. And it's going to see a metabolic support section. Really take a look at that. That's really important. And you'll notice when you're having more B vitamins, you will feel better. You'll feel more energetic. When you're more energetic, guess what? You want to burn calories. You want to go on a run. You want to go, maybe not run, but you want to go on a walk, a hike, a lift. You want to make love. You want to do these things. You feel great. Fat's going to come off if you feel great. I'll tell you that. I'm telling you. If you feel great, you feel energetic, you feel in a great mood, fat will come off of your body. All right, let's continue. Vitamin B3, niacinamide. This is going to help with skin again. It's going to inhibit the oxidation of fat within tissues, which is a very stressful process. And you're going to get that within fish and beef. So very helpful. This pairs well with aspirin. So if you're like me and you're really trying to max your metabolism, thiamine, aspirin, niacinamide, vitamin E, progesterone, cyproheptadine, T3, T4, all of these are going to be foundational. Vitamin K, vitamin D, maybe vitamin D, right? You might not need that. Still doing more investigation, but let's continue. Vitamin B5, necessary to metabolize protein, fat, and carbohydrates. Again, it is the B vitamins are very important for your metabolism. You're gonna see it's metabolizing. It is breaking down that protein, fats, and carbs and assimilating them. All right, that is what the metabolism is. It is making use and making energy from the foods you eat. So we want to make energy from the foods we eat. Yogurt, meat, eggs. Okay, that's where Greek yogurt comes in. Perfect. Eggs, you see, right? Ton of great nutrients, right? By having low fat milk and having low fat meats, we can afford to get fat from eggs. So a lot of times people in diet culture think, I'm going to have only one egg and a bunch of egg whites. No, right? There's times maybe where you do that, but for the most part, right, for the vast majority of people to help, we don't want to do that. We want to keep, our solid, 2 to 4 eggs, especially if it's not a high carb day, 2 to 4 eggs, maybe 2 to 6, and then have lower fats throughout the day. So then you very lean protein sources rather than having like a ribeye or 80/20 beef. Keep eggs in because they're super micronutrient dense, and then reduce the fat from your meat sources. That would be the argument, the counter argument to that. Okay. B12, B7. I really want to talk about B12. B7, biotin. Okay. This is going to be needed for cell growth and metabolism of fats and amino acids and assists in the transfer of CO2, which is critical. I'll talk about that later for metabolism, oxygen, and many aspects of alkalinity, which people love to talk about acidity, alkalinity. Well, what if you have an improved metabolism? Then you're more alkaline. Boom. So it's a little counter narrative to the Dr. Sebi crowd of some of my clients are in that crowd where they want to talk about alkaline and if you have a proper functioning metabolism, you have enough CO2 where you're not acidic. It reduces lactic acid. So, okay. It's also going to be in eggs, egg yolks, and liver. All right. and more. Wait, there's more. There's that guy, he's got the putty. Forgot Billy something. Okay. B9, folate is going to repair and form DNA, produces healthy red blood cells, RBC, if you're looking at a blood panel. Seafood, eggs, dairy, meat, and liver. Commonalities here, right? Seafood, eggs, dairy, meat, and liver. I mean, these are micronutrient dense foods. All right. B12. Here we are. Critical for proper brain and nervous system function, blood production, metabolism of all cells in the body. Extremely important when you're looking at chrono, chronometer. Make sure you have enough B12, ladies and gentlemen. Seafood, eggs, dairy, meat, liver. Vitamin D. What do you know? It's critical for calcium absorption. Very similar to magnesium. So you got to get that in sunlight, right? Get as much sun on your skin as you can. If you can be naked in the sun, do it. If you can get half your body, do it. Get as much of your skin on the sun. I take walks all the time, and I like just seeing what's going on. I like seeing the animals and the birds. And the birds are always facing towards the sun in the middle of the day. I swear, I'm walking around, and these birds, we got a lot of robins and orioles around here. And these birds are just squared up right towards the sun. Just they'll be looking for worms, and someone's just chilling. And they're always facing the sun. Okay. They know about the calcium absorption. They know about vitamin D. I can tell you that. These birds are hip. Aside from that, vitamin E is an antioxidant. It's going to fight against polyunsaturated fats. So polyunsaturated fats, PUFAs, which is like soybean oil, canola oil, any nuts, seeds. It's in a lot of fats besides beef tallow, ghee, things like that. Okay. If it's a liquid at room temperature, it's a PUFA. Okay. Saturated fats at room temperature will be solid. So do know that. Even PUFAs, salmon, especially farm salmon, a lot of PUFAs. Wild caught's a little bit different, but farm salmon, which you could get at most restaurants, nah, no bueno for the thyroid. But the PUFAs store in your body fat, and when they're oxidized, they inhibit your thyroid. So vitamin E helps during fat loss. This is a supplement during fat loss. I would argue would be very helpful for you if you're losing fat watching this video. It's going to also reduce estrogen, protect against excess iron. Iron toxicity is another metabolic inhibitor, which we do not want to be having. So we'll continue. Liver and egg yolks would be sources of vitamin E. I do supplement with vitamin E. So that's something I do supplement with. I don't use a ton of supplements, but vitamin E is namely one. Okay, another one, vitamin K, necessary for proper calcium uptake and blood clotting. I use this in combination with aspirin and vitamin D daily. I need to reorder some. I use it from Ideal Labs. Shout out Georgie Dinkoff. You're gonna get that from food, aka via goose liver, Gouda cheese, annatto. Nattokinase is something I'll use as well sometimes for a supplement that will help, um, you know, decrease the risk of arterial plaque and things of that sort. Ghee, butter, egg yolks. You'll see a lot of these, right? Fat soluble vitamins within fats. So on a low day when you're low carbs, you can have more fat soluble vitamin types foods. Continuing. Calcium, that's going to be critical for bone and teeth creation, nerve function, and muscle contraction, regulates the heartbeat, lowers the blood pressure. And ideally, you want 2 grams per day or 2,000 milligrams per day minimum of calcium. Very, very critical for fat loss. The higher you push calcium without touching your calories, you will notice more fat loss. I have a lot of clients drinking more than a quart of milk a day, 1 quart, 32 ounces, and they're losing fat and they're feeling great. And I do the same. So, highly recommend it. Of course, you're going to find that in dairy. If you're allergic to dairy, could be a few things behind that. SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth due to a low thyroid, is probably namely one. You'll notice too, tend to be Northern Europeans, people stemming from the Scythian, Atlantean type people, have had milk in their diet for a long time. So they tend to process that better. If you're not somebody of that stock, then starting to reintroduce it slowly, that's something I'll help people with, maybe like 2 ounces per meal, just slowly reintroducing it. Other people love it. Like, again, it is really genetic dependent. Like, I'll find certain people, if I have more like Caribbean client, they might like fish and tropical foods more than a Irish client who might like potatoes and beef and milk and berries. Like, people do like different things depending on who they are, and that's completely okay. So just keep that in mind, all right? But in general, white people tend to be able to digest milk a little bit easier because it just seems like length of ancestry who's consumed it. So If you're not, or if you're African American or somebody else, reintroducing milk slowly can be helpful. But I do recommend milk, even if it doesn't, whether it's starting with lactose free or things like that, extremely beneficial. Low fat. But you can save a bunch of eggshells. You can boil them and you can powder them. And that's a great source of calcium as well. Or you can buy that as a supplement. You can create a lot of supplements too. And then bone broth. I'll have a sip of that. All right, continuing on. Zinc. It's going to work as an antioxidant. It's going to help. Again, it's going to assist the conversion of T4 to T3. What do you know? Very critical for fat loss. Very critical. We want more T3. Instead of taking a GLP, increase your T3. All right. It's also needed for immune function. Oysters are going to be a source. Shrimp, power source. Lamb and beef. Okay. Copper. Man, this is critical within your mitochondria for oxidative energy. Okay, as it says here, and then production of red blood cells which carry which carry the nutrients. So that's gonna be key here, guys. And you're gonna get that within oysters, liver, potatoes, and shellfish, namely oysters and liver. I like to have both those once a week minimum. They're just a freaking great source of getting copper. I have people also have copper cups. You can do that if you'd like to. Selenium. This is needed for thyroid and liver. Your doctor or dietitian from the medical system will love to tell you to have Brazil nuts. Have a couple Brazil nuts. Don't have too many. You're gonna overdose, but have a couple Brazil nuts. We've been told that. I would rethink that. I would rethink if you feel any better. You probably don't. I didn't. Want to get selenium through, again, shellfish, liver, beef, even lamb, even some lean chicken. That'll be really helpful. Selenium is needed within your thyroid, your deiodinase enzymes, which you have three of mainly. Those would help create your T4 that then gets converted within your cells, but mainly your liver, like I mentioned earlier. Okay, and then iron, that's used for thyroid conversion. So it's needed, but we don't want excess iron. Okay, it's used for the production of hemoglobin. That's going to transport your oxygen, O2, from blood to the tissues, which we really need. We want that oxygen. We breathe it in. You re-oxygenate your blood. It gets sent out to the tissues, and that brings the energy in there. You need oxygen. Okay, excess iron, like it says here, can be toxic. Ray P talks about this extensively, but oxidizes fats, name a lot of the PUFAs too, can cause age spots. You're gonna see a lot of the carnivore dieters, right? The people who are like ultra red meat, ultra iron, look kind of older, man. No offense to them, I listen to them, but they do look a little bit older, and that could be a reason why. Iron. You get that in fish, oysters, beef, liver, mussels. I do think you should eat it with calcium. I think that can be real helpful. Some people are iron deficient. A lot of women, especially on their period, but just women in general tend to have less red meat, especially if they're trying to diet. And they'll maybe say red meat bothers them. I would start with a very lean ground red meat. Sometimes steak is just harder to digest than a ground meat. Maybe getting a chuck roast or something like that can be helpful as well for reintroducing red meat. Start slow again, but red meat, very helpful for the iron. Iron supplements don't really do it as much as having it actually through food. But again, you can get it through fish or other things too. All right. On the fats. I need to wake the hell up. All right. Saturated fats, preferably there, we would have them, right? I want to be having a low fat diet, but saturated fats. That's the focus now. All the fats are going to have technically a little bit of monounsaturated, polyunsaturated. That's okay. But ghee, tallow, butter, right? Those are going to be the main fat sources. Tallow, dark chocolate, those are really could be the ones. Ruminant animals, we want that saturated fat from the four stomach animals, venison, elk, beef, bison. Okay. Better than the chicken, the turkey, the pork. I got two freaking commas, they're apostrophes, whatever. Parentheses. Okay. Shellfish and whitefish rather than salmon, trout, or sea bass, right? We want lean white fish. The fattier fish a lot of times have the polyunsaturated fats. Now, again, don't freak out. You can have some vitamin E. Have wild caught salmon if you're to have it. Sardines aren't the end of the world either. But again, in moderation here, be mindful. Use some vitamin E. Monounsaturated fats, I would use those after cooking, like an olive oil or a avocado. And I think fats can be generally kept pretty low for people. I'll go over kind of the macro split in the future in this video. But I think you can keep those generally under 80. Most clients I keep under 80 grams of fat, 90 at the max, maybe, unless you're over 300 pounds and you're a pro athlete. It's different for some of those guys. Okay. Polyunsaturated fats, right? These are to block the secretion and transport of your thyroid hormone. So I emphasize how important thyroid hormone is for fat loss. Now, if we're eating foods that inhibit our ability to create the fat loss hormone, fat loss might be pretty hard. So let's not do that. That would be that's going to be my advice to people I work with and my advice to you, hopefully here. Right, I learned a lot from free resources, so I want to be giving free resources as well as paid. So here it is. Right, this is generic. You can apply it to your life. For people, I just it's fucking exactly what they need to be doing for you. All right, apply this to how you live. You want to be avoiding restaurant food with PUFAs. So a lot of the fried food, it's not going to be fried in beef tallow, unfortunately. If it was, I'd say, yeah, if you're having a higher fat meal, have some fries, but it's not in beef tallow, so don't have those. If you want to have a high functioning metabolism and feel good, again, you're human. I've had stuff that's PUFA before recently. It's not the end of the world. Use some vitamin E, but we'll continue. Right? Many people who talk about eating PUFAs, I'm going to refrain from using the negative language because I don't have any emotional tie to it. I just want to help you. And I think sometimes people act like they're trying to help you, but they really don't want to help you because they profit off of you being sick, but thinking you're being helped. A cured patient is a patient lost. And again, this is not only for doctors, okay, or insurance-based medicine, but this is for supplements and other types of people, even people who sell you blood work. It's a whole freaking industry. I just want to give you some truth and some knowledge, and then you take it, you use it as you may. Okay, so the thyroid stimulates all tissues and cells within the body. When it is inhibited, the process is slowed, including fat loss, digestion, libido, right? Man, if you don't have a high libido, that's just like, that's your vital energy, right? Don't freaking just be gooning all the time. But high libido is that energy that you can then kind of rechannel, right? If you're using retention or other techniques, right? Tantras or other meditation, then you can rechannel that high libido into many different actions, man, and that permeates off of you. So keep that. We want that high libido. I can't emphasize that enough. I'm just, especially for men who I work with, probably I have over by 40, 50 men I work with. I work with women too, only like, 5 to 10, not as many. So I talk a lot to the men. All right, we'll continue. Digestive issues tend to correspond with PUFA consumption. Just talking to my mother last night, right? She's like, I was talking to her and she's like, man, I had food. They had PUFAs. And my stomach's killing me. I feel terrible. I'm like, I know. I did the same thing a few weeks ago. I gave her a bunch of vitamin E and other things, but be mindful of that. All right. Look at that freaking picture right there. Got the New Balance swag on. I'm drinking that kettle fire bone broth right now. Make your own. I just, I've been working a lot, so I haven't made the time to make my own. Mm. Just finish it up. Nice and salty. I got some potatoes here. This was actually in the summer, so uh Jack a few months ago didn't realize that having these resistant starches um, with skin isn't great for digestion. But either way, carrots are fantastic. Cheese, duck eggs, man, duck eggs are freaking power bombs, dude. Power bombs. Eggs, got tomato there. Beets, I love me some good beets. But either way, macro ratio, right? You want to be at least having twice the amount of carbs as you have protein. So for me, if I'm eating 200 grams of protein a day, you bet your ass I'm not eating less than 400 grams of carbohydrates, especially on a training day. Okay. If it's a low day, that's right, I'll do carb cycling for a lot of people, and I'll explain this in a few minutes. On a day where you have no exercise and you're really trying to be in a consistent deficit, carbs can maybe dip under that, but definitely don't want your carbs under protein. That's no bueno. That's a freaking low metabolism waiting to happen. If it's not already happening. Okay. Be mindful of fats, right? When we're having high carbs, so if I'm having maybe 100 carbs per meal, I don't like to have over 10 grams of fat with those carbs. That's an arbitrary number, and you'll know. But right, if you have a daily goal of maybe 400 grams of carbs, 60 grams of fat, you can't really combine those too much. And if you're having fats again, different fats work differently. So coconut oil is going to work differently than a PUFA, even than a regular fat. It's got short and medium chain triglycerides. It's going to be used much more quickly. It's going to interfere less with carbohydrate metabolism. So again, when you have high carbs and you're after watching this, you're like, you know what, Jack convinced me to have more carbs. Just before you just start spamming carbs, pull fats back, motherfucker, please. Or else you're gonna comment, Jack made me get fat. Now I bulked up doing this and had carbs at 1,000 and fats over 100, and you'll bulk up doing that, all right? But we don't. your goal is not to do this. So nutrition again is very personal dependent, hence why I coach individually, right? That's why people pay me to work with them specifically, and I create an exact structure on what to eat 7 days a week, when to eat, what to sub in, what to sub out, how to cook it, extremely in depth. Um, but that's, that's what people want. So if you want direct help with that, perfect. Let me know. If not, this is how I would generally structure it with the 2-to-1 ratio, at least, right? 6 to 8 windows, right? I'm almost never not consuming calories and carbohydrates. So I'm always keeping my liver full of glycogen. I take supplements to also help keeping cortisol low, but I view food as how I'm going to keep my cortisol low. That's really important. Minimum of 4 times you're eating per day. But I think orange juice and milk, you can just be sipping in between meals. I view those as snacks, right? Like 15, 20 ounces of each between meals, 1% milk, some OJ. Man, you're keeping protein in there, keeping carbs going in there, a little bit of fat. You're freaking killing it, man. So try that out. See how you feel. You increase your metabolism, reduce hunger hormones, right? The more frequent you eat, the less spikes of insulin you have, the less hunger you'd have. So rather than, again, injecting these drugs, then instead of that, we can have food consistently and hunger actually won't be that high. Once again, I have people losing 50 plus pounds and they rate their hunger out of 10 each week when we do a check-in, and it's like a 2 or 3. And they're losing 2 or 3 pounds a week. So you don't have to starve to, like, I swear, I'm not bullshitting. I got a lot of cool transformations coming out soon, so we'll share. Okay, example fat loss diet. Let's see what Mr. Jack is eating. All right, so the goal is to get shredded 6 pack in a healthy manner, right? I've had a lot of health issues, so it's kind of like a nuanced approach here. This is a little different. It's got a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that I don't always share, but that's okay. Or my body does, right? I'm good. My body has different things going on, or the body. Okay, protein, 2 to 220 grams per day. Carbs are probably typically over 600, to be quite frank. I'm a big carb fan. 600, 800, 500, 700, right? Fats 60 to 70, maybe 75. And calories vary from 3,500 to 4,500. So a low day might be 35, me a non-exercise day. Training days, maybe I train 5 days a week, so 4 days a week are medium, 2 are low, 1's high. High days, 45 to 5,000 calories, with fats below probably 40. Carbs are extraordinarily high as I can push them. And protein's a little bit lower because carbs are protein sparing. But again, as you're gonna see here, right, high sugar on the high day, right? Definitely, if you're looking at like a ratio, so if you're having 600 carbs, you want at least 300 from simple. They'll again reduce, if you're having all starches, you could store more body fat. So I do prefer having higher sugar on these high carb days. And when you're reintroducing carbs in general, slowly introduce more and more juice and you'll maintain the same weight. And before you know it, your maintenance is instead of 2,000 calories, 2,500 calories. And you're just having more carbs and you feel better. That's great. That's what you want to be doing. So then when you go into deficit or you increase cardio steps, improve sleep, or decrease food again, you'll lose more body fat because you've bumped up that maintenance. So when you pull down a little bit, you'll lose the fat. Okay. Moderate protein on those high carb days. So maybe like 150 to 180. And then fat's probably under 40 grams for me. Medium day, right? This is a medium to high carb, depending on how much of a deficit you're in. Depends how low fats are. Protein is again moderate. And then low day, this is where I want my fat soluble vitamins, my vitamin E, D, K from food. Medium carbs, I want to be getting my liver, my oysters, stuff like this. I like to do a micronutrient Sunday. That's kind of how I structure it out. And then proteins, medium to high, maybe 200 plus on that day. Again, carbs, protein sparing, and I view all foods as supplements. This is not medical advice. If you didn't know that already. Okay, right, daily structure. So, right, I typically will lift in the morning, and then maybe PM I'll do jujitsu. So I probably maybe do 6 to 8 training sessions per week, 4 in the weight room, and then 2 to 4 jujitsu, along with some hikes maybe throughout the day, throughout the week. I'll go on a few like dedicated, just no phone, get lost hikes where I really enjoy. Okay, carb cycling, right? This is an example day. How I started oat bran bowl. I do the power bowl. I posted about this on Instagram before. You might think I'm crazy. So a lot of people, I guess, think it's crazy that I combine cottage cheese with oats and maple syrup, but either way, I'll have oat bran, Greek yogurt, maple syrup, then some coffee, milk, sugar mixed in, maybe some collagen too, and some OJ. Meal two, I will be hitting my weights in the morning. I'll drink some OJ, salt, baking soda, collagen. Meal three, I'll come home, start some work, milk and OJ, have some lunch, fish, rice, and carrots, take a walk, do some more work, milk, OJ, Coca-Cola, coffee, enter jujitsu, OJ, salt, baking soda, collagen, post, jujitsu, shrimp, fruit, milk, or maybe some sorbet. And then evening, depending on if it's how many fats I have left, I'll have either ice cream or sorbet. Haagen-Dazs is the go-to source because it's higher quality than most of the other junk on the market. I'd like to make my own eventually too. We'll get there. We'll get there. All right. Sources. Yeah, boy, Ray Pete. Come on now. Check him out, man. I learned so much from this guy. So he's got a great website, Ray Pete Articles. Check out his books. I read two of them. I'm reading on Mind and Tissue now, but Regenerative Energy and Nutrition for Women, which are both here. I mentioned Broda Barnes a lot. I would definitely check out. He's got, I think, over 10 books. The main one I reference consistently is hypothyroidism and unsuspected illness. So give that a check. Check it out. And then Better Energy and How to Heal Your Metabolism by Kate Deering. These are both fantastic reads. I'm in the middle of Better Energy. Kate's also my coach personally. I've learned a lot from her. She learned a lot from Ray. So down the tree, I'm thankful to learn from somebody who's learned from Ray because he's a cool influence, really interesting character. So look him up, check him out. Okay, he's got some cool videos on KMUD, talks a lot about different things. It's a radio show. Generative Energy was another show with Danny Roddy, Georgia Dinkov, where he spoke often. And then he has some other great interviews, namely this one where it was something about the tiger, ride the tigers, like that. He had a two-part, they were like 4 hours each, great videos. Okay, let's dive into the Q&A though. So thank you, right, Q&A time. If you want to chat with me, jackfklink@gmail.com is my Gmail. Simple guy. And let's dive into the questions. Let me pull up my questions here. Let's see here. And I had a few good questions here, right? So first one is, I know your thoughts on creatine, but do you think it's worth taking with the studies on athletes and how it helps for muscle? And then we'll talk into contact athletes and how it helps for brain. So let's first start on, right, some things to address for creatine. Okay, so we want to address purity versus the benefits, right? Should be addressed with any supplement. Okay, creatine can be easily saturated just through food, so I want to just put that out there. And creatine's made from cyanide, but we'll continue, right? A poor metabolism and low CO2 from a low metabolism will actually downregulate your ability um, to absorb and store creatine. So if you have a poor metabolism, you can supplement with a lot of creatine, but you can't actually absorb and store it. So once again, we're not really getting to the root cause of the issue. Um, so again, I think that's a huge thing. If you don't have sufficient CO2, which is a byproduct of proper cellular respiration, you can't maintain cellular energy, which is then stored as ATP and creatine phosphate. So some other notes I put on here, right? Thyroid hormone and magnesium are necessary to stabilize ATP and maintain metabolic efficiency, which is a byproduct creates CO2, which then allows the body to store creatine and ATP. So again, you need thyroid and magnesium to allow your body to have a proper metabolism, to allow your body to have CO2 to then absorb and assimilate creatine and ATP. Okay. A lot of issues with creatine arise with heavy metals. So things like mercury, arsenic, lead, cadmium, right? These are widespread. They're common in most supplements. So those are some things to be mindful of. Okay. Some other things that I just wanted to kind of brief on with supplements. Synthetic vitamins, ascorbic acid, which is in many foods and supplements, contains heavy metals. Okay, so Ray once said that a gram of highly purified Regent grade vitamin C in distilled water produce free radicals at a rate equivalent to a killing dose of X-rays due to trace heavy metals. Okay, so again, heavy metals are very, very common in supplementation, even just in vitamin C. And when you have an excess of reduced vitamin C taken in, it finds copper and iron. Okay, then it makes polyunsaturated fats rancid instantly. So then the combination of a trace iron or copper plus vitamin C plus fat creates extreme lipid peroxidation, which is not something we want to have going on. It's very, very much inflammatory within the body. Okay, so some more supplement issues, right? Machine lubricants and other manufacturing debris will get into the supplements, right? So silicon dioxide is something I mentioned earlier. Common additive, it's a lubricant that's put in machinery to then let these powders fall through. The issue is this can enter the bloodstream. It's going to be irritating, can lead to immune or actually just carcinogenic, aka the creation of tumors in the body, which we don't want. Teflon, which is also used in a non-stick cookware, is also an issue with a lot of these supplements because again, the things go through through the machines which have Teflon. So again, carcinogen. Be careful of that. And then many supplements have microorganisms. So we're talking about fungi, we're talking about yeast, bacteria. Okay, right? These are used from GMO, so genetically modified organisms, during this industrial fermentation process, right? It's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to purify these products. So when they're created from these, they're in there. Then people wonder how they get mold toxicity and they have brain fog. Well, you might be having supplements that come from bacteria, fungi, or yeast. So again, those can cause intense allergic reactions. Some people will just feel better stopping all supplements in general. So again, I'm not here to sell you supplements. I'm here to actually advise you to be really cautious about supplements you take in. Check their certificate of analysis. That's something important that they should be having. I can't guarantee every batch is the same, but it can be helpful. But again, industrial citric acid. All right, okay, this is going to be unlike the citric acid, which is actually in food. Manufactured, it's going to be derived from mold. Aspergillus niger is known as an allergen, can cause a lot of issues for people. Um, and the pathogenic nature of mold, its remaining fragrance in the final product, can be responsible for a lot of the inflammatory reactions some people experience with supplementation or with food in general. Also in supplements, right? You got solvents and petroleum byproducts or just petroleum products. So you have petroleum distillates. These are in a lot of the soaps. These are in a lot of other things, right? But they'll be maybe labeled as natural vitamin E. They're contaminated with this petroleum. These are used during the extraction process. I learned a lot of this actually when I worked in the cannabis industry. Okay, a lot of these solvents were very much problematic. Some of these supplements might even taste like kerosene. That's a petroleum byproduct. We don't want to be having that, right? Solvent residues. So decaffeinated coffee, right? That has a lot of health risks. So your boy does not have decaffeinated coffee, um, because they can have a lot of residues from the solvents used for decaffeination, right? You got benzyl alcohol, right? That's a bacteriostatic agent. That's used in injectable progesterone, neurotoxin, allergen, right? You've got in supplements, you also have oxidation and decomposition of products. So there's dehydrated and processed supplements. Those are highly susceptible to oxidization, to being oxidized. Okay, oxidation, and that creates toxic byproducts. During supplementation creation process, you also have amino acid breakdown. Okay, so cysteine, tryptophan, those are very sensitive to oxidation during dehydration and processing. So the amino acids you get, although these are inflammatory, many of them can be damaged. But then there's also tryptophan supplements, right? Um, and these can also have many different contaminants. They'll lead, there's other different syndromes. EMS syndrome is one Pete talked about. It's common. Um, okay. Lipid peroxides. These are, so maybe supplements like freeze-dried organs, right? Other dehydrated substances can have decomposed amino acids and have a lot of issues within those as well for um, for that reason. Okay, and then you've got different binders, right? These are a lot of binders and fillers within tablets and other kind of capsules, and these are harmful contaminants as well. So, right, you got talc, which is in a lot of baby powder. It's a carcinogen as well. Titanium dioxide. I've seen this in supplements that I've bought before as well. That's a common additive, right? Its particles enter the bloodstream can trigger allergic or stress reactions. Not something we want in our supplementation. Other fillers, you've got microcrystalline cellulose, which I've seen, various gums, carinogen or other xanthan gums, and then different polymers to stabilize the emulsion processes, and these interact with different bacteria, cause inflammation again. So being very cautious of what you have in supplements, right? It's a rabbit hole that I'm going down right now. So God bless you for listening. But again, some things about thyroid and creatine, right? Let's chat about that, right? Creatinine is a marker of thyroid function. So creatinine is a byproduct of creatine metabolism. The sources are explicitly noting that I've looked at that creatinine levels are often low in individuals with hypothyroidism. right? Ray Peat described creatinine as a vague indicator of the activity of the energy production system, suggesting that when thyroid function is low, the production or turnover of creatinine slash creatine is reduced. Okay, thyroid is also the base anabolic hormone. So it's essential for protein synthesis. So without quality thyroid production and thyroid hormone, right, they stimulate and direct protein synthesis throughout the body. So the endogenous synthesis of creatine requires specific amino acids, right? It requires glycine, arginine, methionine, and then it has enzymatic processes with protein. Okay, uh, these are all very important. Anabolic stimulus is a prerequisite for the production. Okay, liver function. Creatine is primarily synthesized in the liver. Again, I spoke a lot about this already today, in the kidneys and then the pancreas as well. And the thyroid hormone is the ultimate conductor of steroid and protein synthesis and is necessary for the liver to function efficiently. So again, thyroid is the prerequisite to creatine. Okay, in hypothyroidism, liver metabolism slows down, which would logically impair its ability to produce various metabolites, including creatine. So when you have low thyroid and you have a poor functioning liver, now we have less ability to create, store, and absorb creatine. All right, let's continue, right? The balance of ATP and creatine phosphate, right? Thyroid hormone is the primary regulator of oxidative respiration and the production of ATP. Creatine phosphate acts as an intracellular energy reserve that exists in balance with ATP. So energy depletion, specifically the loss of ATP and creatine phosphate, is a central event in cellular stress and damage. So when you're stressed and low carb, you can't really store and use creatine properly, creatine phosphate. By promoting the efficient production of ATP, thyroid hormone then supports the maintenance of creatine phosphate pool. So when you have proper thyroid function, proper CO2, proper carbs, you will have enough creatine to perform well. That's why people with quality metabolism, so I help with high sugar intake, low fat, don't feel any different when they come off creatine. Again, creatine is also made from cyanide. It's just Solbra talks about this. Okay, continuing on, right? Thyroid hormone allows cells to retain magnesium, which then stabilizes the ATP molecule. So in low thyroid states, the inability to retain magnesium leads to a crampy, inefficient condition where the cells waste energy. Creatine can't be used effectively. And endogenous creatine synthesis is part of a broader bioenergetic system that thyroid hormone keeps relaxed, ready to work by enduring adequate energy reserves. So again, thyroid hormone, the fundamental for ATP and creatine within the muscle. If you don't improve that, just tossing much creatine on top from a supplement that's probably has a lot of those additives that I just spoke about, probably not a great idea. All right. Then let's go into the interference with stress hormones too. So when thyroid function is low, the body compensates by increasing adrenaline and cortisol. Okay, cortisol is catabolic, breaks down muscle tissue to provide glucose, a process that releases amino acids like cysteine and tryptophan, which further inhibit the thyroid gland, like I mentioned earlier. Okay, so this catabolic state is the opposite of the environment needed for healthy endogenous synthesis of protective substances like creatine. All right, so we don't want to be in a catabolic state. We can't use creatine effectively. Thyroid hormone supports the body's ability to synthesize its own creatine by maintaining the anabolic state of the liver. Again, the liver is so pivotal for your metabolism for using creatine. So when it stimulates the necessary protein synthesis and ensures the oxidative energy ATP is available, creatine phosphate system is then charged and ready to be utilized. Okay, hope that makes sense. Let's dive into a little bit of the CO2. But again, your importance of thyroid allows you to use creatine, allows you to absorb it from food, and your liver allows it again to be used and absorbed. So by improving those bottlenecks, we can improve the ability to use creatine before just spamming creatine. Hope that makes sense. A little bit of the nuance behind creatine. The importance of CO2. This is also something I wanted to emphasize that I have written down as well. Okay. Carbon dioxide is described it's an essential component of the life process, right? It's required to maintain the energy charge of cells, which is most immediately related to biological function and structure, right? Energy is structure, right? Pete talks about this, okay? So specifically, carbon dioxide plays a role in preserving the body's intracellular energy reserves. This is all we talk about with creatine, intracellular, this and that. Here we are. Let's dive in. Okay, so right, it plays a critical role in preserving the body's intracellular energy reserves. These exist as ATP and creatine phosphate. So prevention of energy depletion, right? And a deficiency in CO2, which is why I use this during my training and have many athletes use baking soda within training. Okay. So, right, if you're deficient in it, it can be caused by hyperventilation, by hypothyroidism, presence of lactic acid in the blood from training. It's going to directly decrease cellular energy, specifically depleting the stores of ATP and creatine phosphate. So now when CO2 is lost, the cell enters an inefficient metabolic state where energy molecules are destroyed idly rather than maintained. So everything's just cleared out rather than weighted and being, all the cells are being about to be used. They're just all killed off. We don't want that. Okay. Creatine phosphate acts as kind of an energy reserve for the muscle, but aging and stress involve defective reserves of this molecule. So again, if we're in a highly stressed state, we cannot actually use creatine effectively within the muscle. No bueno. Okay. So maintaining a high level of CO2 is the primary way to change the system. Okay. And that's a byproduct again of a properly functioning glucose metabolism. So suppressing lactic acid is one of the most important ways it's one of the most important ways CO2 maintains creatine. Okay. By suppressing the formation of lactic acid. Lactic acid and CO2 have opposing effects. CO2 promotes efficient energy production. Lactic acid is a signal of metabolic distress that displaces CO2 and forces the cell into a wasteful, reductive stress state. Okay, then there's a vicious cycle, right? A lack of CO2 allows lactic acid to form. Okay, when further displaced CO2 creates a cycle that leads to wasting of glucose and then destroys energy. And then we would argue it destroys energy reserves like creatine phosphate, but this is where it relates to cancer. Okay. So at high altitudes, the body retains more CO2 due to lower oxygen pressure. This retained CO2 inhibits cellular excitation and allows muscles to work intensely without producing excess lactic acid, thereby preserving energy efficiency and high energy phosphate stores. So the activation of an oxidative respiration, meaning a glucose metabolism, carbon dioxide is not just a waste product, okay? It is essential for the efficient use of oxygen within the mitochondria. Okay, let's really dive into this. Why is CO2 so important for the mitochondria and fat loss, right? It maintains creatine phosphate by activating the Krebs cycle. Okay, CO2 stimulates the Krebs cycle, right? The tricarboxylic acid, where the site CO2 is generated and oxidative metabolism occurs, right? This facilitates ATP synthesis. It is believed that CO2 might even have a direct role in the production of ATP by facilitating the dehydration of phosphate precursors. Okay, these then allow the cell to store energy as ATP and creatine phosphate. In maintaining mitochondrial stability, CO2 increases the stability of mitochondria. It protects them from respiratory defect. This is seen in aging and cancer, like I mentioned, okay? Where energy production shifts from oxidation to inefficient glycolysis. That's not something we want to be happening. Right, so then there's electronic and structural stability, okay? So CO2 binds to amine groups of proteins such as lysine, acidifying and stabilizing them. This interaction protects proteins by occupying amino groups. CO2 prevents the binding of harmful substances like glycinating fragments of polyunsaturated fats, which would otherwise degrade the cell structure and ability to maintain energy. Okay, CO2 also regulates minerals. It allows the cells to retain magnesium, which stabilizes ATP and exclude calcium. That's excitatory, interferes with energy production. Okay, and then it favors a resting state. So a cell abundantly charged with energy, having high levels of ATP and CO2 is a stable, high energy resting state. In this state, the cell can properly sequester and maintain its creatine phosphate pool. So again, by having a properly functioning metabolism, by having CO2 as a byproduct, ATP and creatine phosphate within the muscle are able to be used effectively. Continuing on, right? How to recover from a brain injury. Okay, so there's some nuances behind here. All right, let's dive in. So, right, research indicates that creatine provides significant benefits for brain injury, primarily, right, through supporting energy metabolism and protecting against excitotoxic cascade following an injury. Okay, this is actually something I studied more in undergrad, so this is cool to talk about. So, for a contact athlete, right, the approach to coming back from a brain injury here, we would want to focus on mitochondrial energy and the production of that. We would want to suppress inflammation. And then we would possibly want to use or consider using protective steroids to prevent permanent brain damage like CTE, right? Chronic traumatic cephalopathy. I need to get better at pronouncing that. But CTE, we don't want to have CTE, right? I have a lot of tits to the head, so this hits home. This is why I kind of researched this extensively. So, what does creatine do, right? It serves as a vital neuroprotectant and by enhancing the cellular energy charge and maintaining the balance between ATP and phosphocreatine. So, how are we to support this bioenergetically, right? So, brain tissue has high and fluctuating energy demands. I mean, I've got a group chat of guys, and there's like chess players who lost 10, 15 pounds just straight glucose because their brain is working so hard. So, creatine rapidly regenerates ATP from ADP independently of mitochondrial transport. So, this is crucial during the energy crisis that follows a brain injury. Okay. So, protection against excitotoxicity. So, toxic effects of being overly stressed and stimulated, right? Creatine's been shown to antagonize the depletion of ATP and inhibit NMDA receptor mediated calcium response, which otherwise initiates a cascade of cell death, which we definitely don't want from a brain injury, right? That's the whole issue is you have a brain injury, cell death occurs within the brain, and you lose little by little cell function of the brain. So how do we get around that, right? Creatine's helpful, but using it through, right, again, a supplement, right? It's important here, but we can improve it via metabolism rather than using maybe impure supplementation. So let's use the body's endogenous synthesis of creatine through adequate thyroid function and the consumption of specific amino acids like glycine. So let's dive in a little bit more. Okay. This was, again, something I really nerded out here. So, for a contact athlete dealing with concussions or repeated subconcussive impacts, maybe a football player, maybe an MMA fighter, right? A few things to prevent the progression of brain damage from going to feel like your bell's rung to then, a lot worse things, right? We don't want that to happen. Okay. Protective steroids. So, a few things here, right? Progesterone and pregnenolone are the most essential substances after concussions, right? These are very much neurosteroids. I'm not sure if these are tested for. Again, I don't prescribe drugs to people. This is just me talking right now. I kind of dove deep into this, and I think this is really applicable to many people who have brain injuries. So, again, progesterone, right, highly effective at reducing brain edema, which is swelling and preventing cell death of brain cells if administered soon after injury, right? This is something I use daily. This is something to keep in mind if you're somebody who's going through subconcussive or concussive blows, having progesterone on site. Ray Peets, he talks about a dose of 100 to 200 milligrams is protective and moderately anesthetic following acute head trauma. So I use like 3 to 5 milligrams daily. So this would be well over that. This would be in a scenario of significant brain trauma. Pregnenolone, this is a tougher one to source for me personally. Tom Littlewood is somebody I've seen who has a source of this, but it's been tough to find. Either way, right, pregnenolone is going to help stabilize the frontal lobe, the nerves involved in planning and attention. So very important here as well. Protects brain cells from fatigue-induced injury, enhances memory and mood stability. So again, progesterone, pregnenolone, two things that could be helpful. Going forward, right, enhancing metabolism and energy. This is really where the bread and butter is going to be made for really trying to get ahead of a brain injury and CTE. All right, so the brain health is inseparable from the body's ability to produce oxidative energy. Thyroid, the active thyroid hormone T3, is the ultimate conductor of protein synthesis and is necessary to maintain the energy levels required for regenerative healing and the removal of cellular debris in the brain. Okay. B vitamins as well. High doses of B1 thiamine can really help improve mental focus and clarity by aiding in the energy production process from glucose. Okay. Niacinamide, B3, which I talked about earlier, inhibits the release of toxic fatty acids. Like I said, right, we talked about this earlier within the actual cells. Very important. Protects against excitotoxicity, facilitates recovery from TBI. So, right. And then CO2. So this is something I do pretty common. You could get a CO2 machine. You could do bag breathing, paper bag, breathe in and out. So B1, T3, pregnenolone, progesterone, and some CO2, paper bag breathing, right? Simple way to increase your CO2, circulation to the brain. This can be helpful before bed. I'll do this sometimes as well. Okay, and then diet and anti-inflammatories, right? Eliminating PUFAs after brain injury could be massive, right? Contact athletes, you should be strictly avoiding PUFAs. Fish oil, vegetable oils, right? Fish oil, man, don't want fish oils. Okay, the fats, these PUFAs accumulate in the brain during stress or low blood sugar, and then are released as free fatty acids. That poisons the brain and increases the risk of edema. Also managing iron and phosphate, which I talked about earlier, which having with calcium, really important. So reducing excess iron and phosphate is critical from kind of that like rusty, forgetful brain effect from a TBI. So managing the iron and phosphate could be very important. Lowering the overall systemic inflammatory load. Some people even do bloodletting. Aspirin, daily low dose aspirin. I've pushed this up into a daily high dose aspirin. This can be something I would recommend as well to people. Very low hanging fruits like acid. It's been used since ancient Greece. Use this with vitamin K to prevent these side effects. Again, everyone responds differently. Maybe you don't like aspirin. That's okay. This is just another thing that you could possibly use is aspirin, right? It's going to prevent against several kinds of toxicity. Glutamate and free radical damage acts synergistically with thyroid to improve brain energy. I have a lot of people use this for fat loss. Aspirin, very, very, very simple. All right, protein and sugar. Right, athletes require definitely over 100 grams daily of protein. Sufficient sugar, like I mentioned earlier, sugar, sucrose, and fructose to maintain blood glucose, brain temperature. Right, we need a high brain temperature. We want the prevention of the release of cortisol, which is catabolic. All right, and then the gut. This is very important for TBIs as well, right? Um, TBIs can trigger gut barrier dysfunction, right? Traumatic brain injuries can impact the gut. They are very much linked. So, endotoxin, right? A leaky gut is going to allow endotoxin to enter the bloodstream, then travels to the brain, exacerbates post-traumatic inflammation. This is through the TLR4 receptor. All right, so countermeasures to this for the stomach, right? Charcoal, activated charcoal, 1 tablespoon in a day. See how long it takes to get out of your body until you have black stool, right? Raw carrot fiber. I like doing a raw carrot salad. Cooked mushrooms. I like to cook those for 2 to 3 hours. There's a compound carcinogen in those called agarotine. Boiling mushrooms for 2 to 3 hours cooks that. But all of these insoluble fibers um, or binders, like a charcoal, is going to help bind and remove the toxins from the gut. Okay, that's going to protect the brain from the secondary inflammatory damage. And then light therapy is kind of the final thing you could consider. This is something I've done as well. I have a red light in this room as well, as you can probably see. But what I say? Okay, exposing the head to red and orange light, 600, 1200 NMN penetrates the skull, activates cytochrome oxidase, very important for the metabolism as well, which is very helpful for the brain. What do you know? Proper metabolism helps the brain recover from a concussion. That's what we want, right? It's going to increase mitochondrial metabolic capacity, reduces inflammation, and facilitates repair processes within the injured brain. So the light and the waves of light, so the sun during the day and then red light maybe in the evening and upon waking can be really helpful. So, okay, let's continue onward. I have a few other questions here. Okay, fish oil. I tell all my clients to stop taking fish oil, and I get asked about this all the time. So, right, fish oil should be avoided. Why? Why, Jack? Why? Well, it's highly unstable, metabolically suppressive, and the benefits are actually the result of toxic immunosuppression that can impair long-term performance and recovery. What does that mean? Right? So, unique stressors, maybe of an athlete, right? You're having intense physical exertion, high body temps, and you have a mobilization of fat stores. You're burning fat. So that makes the ingestion of highly unsaturated, rancid oils dangerous for you, the athlete. I have a lot of college and professional athletes, so I tell them not to take these. So I'm not talking on my ass here. I used to take it myself. Okay. Fish oils, EPA and DHA. Okay. They're characterized by having 5 or 6 double bonds, making them more unstable than seed oils, which usually have 2 or 3. So you might hear people like Liver King, other people talk about seed oils. These fish oils are even more unstable. Man. And they oxidize. What does that mean? Well, with heat and oxygen, Oh, that sounds like my body. Well, it is your body. It causes inflammation within your body if it didn't already happen, if it's not already stored within the fridge. Okay. So body temperature hazards, right? Right. That's what I just said. While these oils act as an antifreeze in cold water fish, they spontaneously oxidize at room temperature and do so explosively at the human body temperature of 98.6 if you have a good metabolism. If you're taking these, you probably don't. Right. They are This is something interesting too. Repeat compared fish oil to the drying oils used in paints and varnishes because they polymerize and harden when exposed to oxygen. This would be mucopolysaccharides, which cause arterial plaque and cause death. Would be, I would argue, could be a lot of these fish oils or different seed oils. PUFAs. So in an athlete's oxygenated bloodstream, this process happens rapidly, creating toxic free radical breakdown products like acrolein and ethane. All right, these are things I've been kind of looking more into. So I've been getting a lot of questions on these. Some of these compounds, the radical breakdown, toxic free radical breakdown products like acrolein and ethane. I'm not an expert in these, so I'll continue to research more about that. But it doesn't sound like we would want a lot of these things, right? This dried paint effect in our blood. Okay, so how do the PUFAs and fish oils suppress the thyroid and energy production? Okay, so for an athlete, metabolic efficiency is crucial, right? Having a high metabolism. And fish oil blocks the energy system at all levels. So, right, fish oils are going to be thyroid toxic. They inhibit the thyroid. They inhibit the secretion of thyroid hormone from the gland. They block its transport on the proteins in the blood, and they prevent the tissues from responding to the hormone. That's not good. So it basically poisons your mitochondria, right? The highly unsaturated fats in fish oil displace saturated fats like palmitic acid and cardiolipin, and a lipid essential for the function of the respiratory enzyme cytochrome C oxidase, which is important for the metabolism. So the substitution lowers mitochondrial activity, forces cells to rely on inefficient glycolysis and lactic acid production for energy. So it's forcing your body to use stressful energy means, and that long term causes a lot of issues. It's going to block glucose oxidation. So fish oil activates pyruvate dehydrogenase kinase PDK. This is not something we want. It's just like I get stressed out reading this. And it deactivates the enzyme needed to oxidize glucose for energy. So again, very, very, very much downregulates the metabolism. Causes metabolic failure. Congrats, you have a low heart rate and you have to eat barely any food. And now you're going to get aging and diabetes and cancer a lot quicker. So don't want to be having that. Again, look into this as well. I'm not here to blow smoke. I'm here to just look for the truth and help you. Okay. It's also going to reduce your endurance and performance. So, right, I would argue fish oil will reduce your athletic performance if you're an athlete, or just the performance if you're a human who wants to perform well, right? So studies on rats and even salmon showed that those fed less polyunsaturated fats had greater endurance and higher performance than those fed high PUFA or fish oil diets. High stress states like hard training, the body mobilizes stored fats in the bloodstream as free fatty acids. If these fats are fish oils, they amplify the stress response, increase capillary permeability, causing edema, and trigger an inflammatory process that leads to muscle breakdown rather than repair. So then there's the myth of anti-inflammatory. Well, Jack, these people who are selling me this product said it's an anti-inflammatory. All right, let's dive into that. All right, it's a toxic effect of using these, but it's going to poison the white blood cells. So a lot of people have low white blood cell count, right? The oxidative fragments of fish oil toxic to white blood cell counts individually, right? It's going to knock out the inflammatory process in the short term of taking these PUFA fish oils, providing maybe some short-term relief, joint pain, soreness, but it suppresses the immune system. So we don't want to be taking immunosuppressants as athletes or as people, right? Because long-term, within 6 months, the suppression can lead to increased susceptibility to infections and higher risk of metastatic cancer. We don't want that. Okay, right? So using fish oil for inflammation is like, this is a repeat comparison. He this is good. He said using fish oil for inflammation is like using X-rays to treat acne or arthritis. Both work by creating lipid peroxides that temporarily kill the cell involved in inflammation but cause permanent long-range damage. Okay. Lastly, right, accumulation and damage. Let's see. So athletes who use fish oil are building these unstable fats into their tissue structures. Okay, it has slow clearance. So once these are in your fat cells, can take up to 4 years of a changed diet to replace these unstable fats with more productive, protective saturated fats that I talked about earlier. Again, brain degeneration. I mean, there's so many causes, right? There's for a lot of brain degeneration diseases, but man, this is an interesting correlation, eh? So these oils accumulate in the brain with age. Their breakdown products, neuroprostenates and isoprostanes, are highly associated with dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So instead of using fish oil, right, use saturated fats, coconut oil, butter, ghee, tallow. Um, Coconut oil, highly resistant to oxidation, contains medium chain MCT, medium chain triglycerides. Now, some people just eat MCTs, but a lot of those have oils that kind of upset your stomach. So that's why I like having actually coconut oil rather than just getting MCT. Um, depends what they're stored in. Okay. Right. So MCTs, the medium chain triglycerides within the coconut oil, are actually oxidized, um, similarly to sugar. Not the same, but it improves metabolic energy, facilitates tissue repair without the toxic side effects of PUFAs. And then for the trace minerals, like I talked about earlier, selenium. I didn't talk about iodine, but low-fat seafood, whitefish, cod, shellfish, sole, swordfish, tilapia, haddock. So that's the PUFA question. Okay. Let's go into another question I had, right? I wanted to chat about, right, I got questions about curcumin and raw milk. Okay. So, curcumin, let's really dive into this one. So, I think using quinones, which would be like a CoQ10, probably would be a better option. Right, turmeric, which is where this comes from, curcumin, has protective effects technically. Right, it's said to block tumor necrosis factor, TNF, which is implicated in various inflammatory conditions like skin disorders, inflammatory bowel disease. Another cool effect of curcumin, right? I had somebody ask, like an athlete, what do you think about this? A lot of people just, what do you think about this? So then what I do is I look into this deeply and sometimes turn them into articles because I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna learn a shit ton about this. So here I'm sharing this. So I'm doing a lot of these things, right? People ask me, I'm gonna look them up and I'm gonna share um, my thoughts or sources. Okay. All right, iron and collagen. Curcumin may help remove excess iron deposits and assist in rebuilding collagen in joints. Now, the con is digestive difficulty. So it's hard to digest. It suggests that sometimes pre-digesting it with bacteria can help with the assimilation, but then you're risking having bacteria and mold. So that's, again, with supplementation. Now, another caution is cumin. Okay, it's much more highly allergenic. Um, when considering spices. So decent option, right? It does seem like having a anti-inflammatory of curcumin, it could be beneficial, right? I guess the general argument is inflammation is kind of the downstream side effect or effect of poor energy metabolism, right? Excess PUFAs, breakdown, right? Serotonin, endotoxin, stress hormones, estrogen excess, hypothyroid. So usually fixing the metabolism and overall health is a better option than just going for a trendy anti-inflammatory supplement. Okay. And from there, raw milk. What are my thoughts on raw milk, right? What did I say? All right, this was a client question, then I just kind of turned this in, right? Overall, calcium, PTH, it reduces PTH, parathyroid hormone, so I like milk, right? It's going to enhance metabolism, ability to burn body fat, right? People who drink milk tend to have smaller waist circumference, lower visceral fat, if tolerated well, because low thyroid. I did say Northern Europeans, right? The Scythian, Atlantean descendants digest milk. Um, Immigrated from the Russian steppe, Indo-European type people. Okay. Raw milk and benefits. Okay. So, right, it's got a high calcium to phosphate ratio. This is a huge one. Right, Pete talked about this all the time. Very, very essential for, keeping a low stress state, maintaining a high metabolic rate. Now, the question is, what about raw? Now, I'm not like a huge stickler. You don't have to have raw milk. It can be slightly better nutritionally than pasteurized milk because the enzyme quality, they're not boiled off. Now, it doesn't have the added benefits to or the additives, forgive me. All right, so it doesn't have the synthetic vitamins, vitamin A and D and emulsifiers, like polysorbate 80 found in almost all kind of low fat commercial grade milks. So We the synthetic vitamins can actually be the reason for their allergenic response for most people. A lot of people rather, if they don't have those added vitamins, they tend to digest a lot better. So I would argue that. And then milk and raw milk is going to help immune function. Now, the kind of the cautions around that, right? Sanitation. So it's tough to find sometimes a clean raw milk source. They're not always extremely sanitary. That can be, I guess that's the counter, right? That's the counterclaim. It can have it can contain the manure, the dandruff, the bacteria, right? These are all possibilities. Um, and then the stinky weeds. This is something, this is what Ray talked about too. He said the taste and allergenicity of milk depend heavily on the cow's diet. This does make sense. So Pete observed, what did he say? He said cows eating allergenic weeds in a pasture would pass those allergens into the milk, which would cause a mucus reaction or digestive distress in the consumer. So, um, that's something to be mindful of. The source and the quality of what the animal eats is what you eat, right? You eat what the animal eats. And if the animal eats some stuff that's sprayed by chemtrails, then fuck, you're eating it too. So just it's a rabbit hole. Either way, digestive tolerance, right? People who have sensitive intestines can tolerate the ultra processed or ultra pasteurized milk a little bit better. If you get raw milk and it doesn't feel great, maybe boil it to like 160, 170. See how that feels. Um, but the heat does alter the proteins in the milk, inactivates the bacteria that can cause gas and diarrhea in some people. Again, sugar, aspirin, progesterone, thyroid, calcium, all very anti-stress. But I'm overall a big fan of milk. Raw milk does have those caveats, but if it feels good for you, everything's personal dependent. All right, last few questions here. Okay, here. I had somebody who's a triathlete, right? They're eating triathlete, weighed like 120 pounds, 110, 120, eating like 200 grams of carbs. I mean, 200 grams of protein, like 300 grams of carbs, like 90, 69 grams of fat. Um, and they're like, how should I increase carbs? It's like, holy fuck, we need to increase carbs a lot. Again, carbs are protein sparing. You can reduce protein. Somebody who has that much protein, just have a gram per pound of body weight. So if you weigh like 100 grams, 100 pounds, have 100 grams of protein, you know, um, 2 grams per, you know, yeah, I would say probably 100 to 120 grams of protein would be adequate. From there, right, you don't want to be in a deficit. This person does triathlons. So again, probably, 130 to 150 protein, bump the carbs to 450 to 600, and then probably looking at carb cycling. So the days where you're very low, you can have higher fats, maybe around 90, and the other days probably have fats around 50 and have carbs extremely high. Be drinking carbs throughout the whole day. You're going to be want to have, 8 meals a day, intra-training for sure, pre-training, intra-training, post-training, all super high in carbs, lower in fat. And then again, get fats in through coconut oil, eggs, milk. Now, if somebody having fats as low as 50 or 60 grams, you don't really need to be worrying about the Randall cycle in a sense of if all your meals have like 5 to 15 grams of fat, none of those are going to significantly disrupt your glucose metabolism. So I wouldn't overstress about that. Again, the low day would be a day if you're having like 7 eggs, maybe not have like a shit ton of potatoes with it. But again, I don't think that's a huge concern for this person. I would have high micronutrients and I'd be bumping carbs up. And as I decrease protein, of course, you want to increase carbs. So if you're dropping protein from 200 to 150, bump carbs by at least 50 grams. You can probably bump carbs even more because your metabolism should improve. Again, proteins in that high amount can probably inhibit the metabolism. So use a lot of foods I talked about, 6 to 8 eating windows, and always be sipping on carbs and allow your body to, not have those excess amino acids, right? What I wrote down was the amino acids, especially if you're having excess tryptophan, cysteine, methionine, right? They're going to suppress thyroid function, promoting inflammation, increasing catabolic hormone of aka cortisol. So lowering protein and then making sure a decent amount of it's from milk, from gelatin, from bone broth, from eggs, from cheese. Not having those thyroid suppressive amino acids, I would check chronometer. That'd be a big thing too. And then milk, right? Make sure you have quality. You want more calcium than phosphate. I would check that. That's going to help your metabolic rate. Um, with an increase in carbs, right? Liver glycogen is what's going to allow you to convert T4 to T3. And for proper and for really high quality performance, you're going to want T3 in your body. So you need glucose, you need selenium to convert T4 to T3. So be mindful of seafood and have a lot of, I would be, increasing shellfish, seafood, oysters, and increasing glucose would be the main kind of two things. And then a lot of calcium would be kind of some of the foundations for changing this diet a little bit. Um, right. Again, if carbs are too low, stress response happens, T3 production stops, body goes catabolic, you lose muscle because you're not creating enough testosterone. Again, shooting for more sugar over starch. I would have, if you're bumping carbs, bump almost all of that in sugar and fructose. It's gonna be very hard to store as body fat. Fruits, orange juice, honeys, right? Fructose raises the metabolic rate, increases CO2 production, helps the liver store glycogen more effectively than starches. And yeah, I would say bottom line, like 400 grams a day of carbs for sure. And then try a high day where you're maybe doing a high day before a long bike or run or whatever it may be, and 500 plus, and have fats lower that day. Um, right. Be cautious of the aerobic, right? Lactic acidosis and mitochondrial damage, which happens just from long-term cardio. Again, excess lactic acid, it stays high even when resting. It's going to displace CO2, it can kind of cause like tissue suffocation. So intra-workout, having glucose, having collagen, having baking soda, having all of that on your bike, whatever you're doing would be great. Um, so from there, right, fat intake, eliminate PUFAs if you're having any, right? Get those the hell out of here. Get the vegetable oils, the fish oils, the seed oils, all those out of here. Those are going to accumulate in your tissues. They're going to be released during exercise. And those will block the thyroid and poison mitochondrial enzymes. So don't want that. Focus on saturated fats, coconut oil, butter. Um, as I've beaten a dead horse on coconut oil, but that's going to provide these short and medium chain fatty acids, oxidize quickly, similar to sugar, help that burst of energy. Performance enhancing supplements, right? Things we're to think about: aspirin, those going to reduce the free fatty acids, inflammation in general. B3, niacinamide, prevent the release of the fatty acids as well. So this is helpful for glucose oxidation support as well. Vitamin K2, D3, that's going to help muscles and bones, especially the heart rhythm, which is going to be highly stressed. Magnesium can be something to think about as well if you're not having a lot of coffee. And then salt and calcium are going to help stimulate metabolic rate. So many athletes typically underconsume salt. So they always ask me about water. I'd pull salt up and then just drink water to taste, and don't be pissing out freaking orange or dark yellow, but you don't have to be peeing clear either. From there, right, monitor progress. You want to have the body temp increasing, temp and pulse should stay high. Right, very low pulse is downregulated, slow hypothyroid metabolism, and go from there. See how you feel. Hopefully that helps. Let's see, last question or two. Okay, general recovery after hard training sessions. This was another one from an athlete. Other than consistent nutrition and sleep, right? they're gonna know. I'm gonna say digestion, thyroid, sleep are gonna be the three main like focuses. Other than that, right? We want to restore oxidative metabolism, suppress lactic acid, and reduce stress hormones. Those are going to be some of the most important things athletes want to be focused on. So, low hanging fruit, or maybe not low hanging, but some things that I would recommend, right? Light therapy can be helpful. Again, 600 and 900 NMs will help biological recovery, will help enzyme restoration. Hard training can poison, or as Ray says, the stress of darkness can poison the mitochondrial enzyme cytochrome C oxidase. So red light is going to help with the excited electrons, restores the enzyme's function, immediately improves the efficiency of energy production. So literally just having light and wearing blue light glasses. That's why I wore them a lot for this video, but they don't really fit well with my headphones. Can help a lot with metabolism. So people will think I'm a whack job walking around with these on, but improve my metabolism. What you know about that? Okay. Systemic recovery, right? Exposure to bright light at the beginning of the night has been shown to improve physical performance the following day. So that's an interesting one. Like bright light is actually very helpful. This is an interesting one I just saw, so I want to throw that in there. I'm not, again, saying just spam bright light, but especially before a performance, or if you're training in the evening, actually keeping light, high light, staying bright can be actually really helpful. It already talks about this in Generate Energy a lot. Um, and it can help by having this light, okay, right? It's going to reduce pain, inflammation, and restructuring the water within the cells. Okay, it's going to also, um, what else can we do, right? We want to increase CO2. We're going to beat a dead horse. You probably haven't heard people talk about this a lot, so I'm happy to kind of bring this to the forefront for athletes. Is improving, increasing CO2 will be magnificently important, right? People, there's a reason people train at high altitude, man. They live at high CO2. So how can we do that without going to high altitude? Is improving your metabolism, right? Hard training leads, you got hyperventilation, you got deficiency in CO2, you have toxic lactic acid buildup. So how do we get around that, right? Baking soda, I like Bob's Red Mill, sodium bicarbonate. You can also take Epsom salt baths, um, right? A table of baking soda in water before, after exercise, before, after meals can help increase CO2 levels, right? This is going to help with a more efficient glucose oxidation, helps the cells relax by displacing lactic acid and expels excess calcium. Okay, bag breathing, like I mentioned earlier, into a small paper bag, 1 to 2 minutes, several times a day, increases tissue CO2. This will then recharge the system, improve circulation, helps the body recover from lactic acid, or the lactate paradox, they call it, the state where the oxygen deficiency and lactic acid accumulation impair the repair CO2. Okay, baths as well. So for severe fatigue, muscle damage, CO2 baths, um, and using Epsom salts can be very helpful. Right, some supplements and steroids that you can look into. Again, when I'm talking about steroids, I'm not talking about testosterone. I'm talking more about pregnenolone, progesterone. Okay, um, right. Substances that can block the catabolic effects of stress and training can promote the high energy resting state. That's what we want. So, aspirin, niacinamide, again, for you athletes, aspirin's the anti-inflammatory. It's going to help prevent muscle enlargement, um, which is namely in the heart, right? The ventricular hypertrophy people talk about a lot. It's caused by damaged mitochondrial inflammation. People then die from that. So be cautious of that. Hence why I'm saying use aspirin. It seems counterintuitive, but it can help. Also, right, like I mentioned, B3 niacinamide prevents the release of free fatty acids, otherwise block glucose oxidation and promote the formation of lactic acid. So again, pregnenolone and progesterone, right? These are like the freaking goaded stress antidotes. Pregnenolone, something I use, or progesterone, something I use daily. Pregnenolone again. Leave a comment if you know where to get it. Thank you. Okay, right. They're going to stabilize the nervous system, protect the brain and muscles from excitotoxicity. Again, 100 milligrams of pregnenolone. Um, that's going to accelerate recovery. I talked about progesterone earlier for the edema in the brain. Pregnenolone, man, let's find a good source on that. Again, these are hormones that aren't gonna you don't have to use for life. Like testosterone, you can come off, but from my understanding, but progesterone, I don't take that. Like I take it most days, but if I didn't want to, like I've gone on trips, I don't take it. It's not the end of the world. It helps kind of balance it, and it's anti-estrogen, which is helpful as well. Okay, some other things: vitamin D, actually vitamin K and E. Vitamin K helps protect muscles and bones during training, and helpful if using aspirin. Vitamin E protects against the toxic effects of the PUFAs that are released during intense training. Okay, and then warmth. This is another one, right? Metabolic enzymes are sensitive to temperature. Keeping the body warm is crucial. So I'm not a big ice tub guy, right? When I played football, that was a thing to do, ice tubs. I don't I don't like ice tubs, man. They feel make me the cold makes my metabolism slow down, digestion slow down. It does not feel right. So I want to stay, even if I'm going outside, I'm bundling the hell up. Um, Again, warm baths can be a metabolic boost, right? You start sweating, you feel warm, you feel rested. That's all really good. It's going to help restore T3 levels, reduce inflammation. Saunas can be a great way. Just replace the minerals that you're losing when you're sweating. So if you're in a sauna, make sure you have salt and OJ afterwards to prevent that stress response in the liver if it runs out of glycogen. So obviously, like, and then mindset as well as an athlete, right? You want to be playful. I think some of the best athletes treat it as play. That's kind of a form of mastery. But view athletics as play. You're playing a game. Play it. Have fun. And you'll keep stress low. You'll be able to recover better. You'll have a better mentality. around it in general. And the last question, this is actually sneaking this one in. Had a client ask me this one as well. And it was like, what if I just throw in some black beans? And I was like, this motherfucker. He knows the answer to it. He's down over like 50 pounds. I'm not going to out him, but okay. Right. So for people who already have a slow metabolism, which this person does technically based on a low body temp and high 96s, which we're trying like hell to get up, which we're getting up, but it's just taking time, especially losing weight. That's kind of the paradox. Losing weight is going to inherently risk slowing metabolism a little bit. So either way, right, black beans. Why would I not, as a bioenergetic transformation coach, somebody trying to help people, why would I not be recommending these black beans? Even though, yes, people, populations eat them, right? I'm not saying people don't eat them. I'm saying if you're fat and you want to lose fat, why would you not want to eat black beans? Well, let's dive in, right? It is a goitrogen type effect. So they have substances black beans do that interfere with the formation and secretion of thyroid hormone. We don't want to get involved in the thyroid hormone inhibiting that at all. Okay. Trypsin inhibitors, right? Legumes contain seed toxins like trypsin inhibitors that block the protealoic acids enzymes, excuse me, protealoic enzymes needed for both protein digestion and the release of the thyroid hormone from the thyroid gland. So goitrogen effects, trypsin inhibitors, and then it has unsaturated fats within the black beans. They contain PUFAs. They block the tissue's ability to create and the thyroid hormone and inhibit mitochondrial respiration, which then leads to CO2, which we talked about a lot today. Also causes issue with digestion, right? Digestive paralysis, endotoxemia. Right, digestion functions best at 98 to 99 degrees Fahrenheit. Lower body temp slows or stops these functions. Eating black beans, which are rich in fermentable fibers and starches that we don't want to be consuming often, are inherently hard to digest. This can lead to SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth. Sluggish digestion is going to allow bacteria to thrive, especially in the upper GI, upper intestine, where they ferment the bean starches and fibers. Okay, endotoxin, which I talked about earlier, right? This bacterial overgrowth produces endotoxin. This is LPS. What they'll say is, lipopolysaccharide. This is then absorbed in the bloodstream. No bueno. Nitric oxide and serotonin. What do you know? Serotonin, that the big medical wants you having, SSRIs. I would recommend you don't use those if you want to lose fat. That's a whole nother story. But endotoxins going to trigger the production of nitric oxide and serotonin. These both poison mitochondrial energy production and further lower body temperature. So it creates that circle of just metabolic failure, man. We don't want to be having that, right? So everyone thinks high fiber. Oh my gosh, it's gonna help me lose fat. Um, I would say beans are gonna probably promote obesity, poor digestion, and muscle wasting, right? It's gonna fat induced, it could be, forgive me, stress induced fat synthesis. So starch and fiber ferment in the gut, increase stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, right? When there's fermentation in the gut, that's stressful to the body. The LPS, the endotoxins being released, no bueno, man. Cortisol promotes the accumulation of abdominal fat while causing the breakdown of muscle tissue to provide for glucose for the brain. Again, let's just repeat that. Cortisol promotes the accumulation of abdominal fat, which you get from fasting or low carb diets, and this causes the breakdown of muscle tissue to provide glucose for the brain, which which then releases ammonia and blocks your thyroid. Not good. All right, a few more notes here. Randall cycle, right? This is important. So, in relation to the black beans, right? The liberation of free fatty acids from these bean PUFAs or just stress in general, that's going to block the ability to oxidize glucose. So when we shift away from sugar oxidation, it decreases the metabolic rate, decreases the CO2, increases the likelihood that excess calories will be stored as fat. Um, right, inefficient fuel burning, right? Hypothyroid people can maintain or even gain weight on as little as 700 calories a day because their bodies have hibernated to conserve energy. Guess what animals who hibernate eat before going to hibernation? Nuts, seeds. I look at all the squirrels. Now they're coming back out, but it was the long winter. What they eat before? A lot of nuts and seeds to slow their metabolism to conserve energy. We don't want to be hibernating. If you hibernate, no bueno. Beans reinforce torpid state rather than providing metabolic heat needed to burn fat. So instead, right, we want to use pro-metabolic sugars, fruit juice, orange juice, right? Fruit juice and orange juice can increase the metabolic rate up to 20% and provide the glucose the liver needs to activate and convert T4 to T3. High quality proteins, right? Dairy, milk, cheese, eggs preferred over beans. They don't have the suppressive amino acids and they provide calcium, which stimulates metabolic rate and inhibits fat forming enzymes. Antiseptic fibers, right? Instead of beans, raw carrot salad, mushrooms, things like that. That's going to help lower endotoxin and estrogen and does not help those harmful bacteria grow. And then saturated fats, coconut oil, and butter can help interrupt the antithyroid effects of stored PUFAs, increase heat production, use some vitamin E. You're good to go. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the first L2L locker room on foundational fat loss foods with some questions. In the future, I'll aim to do this fully live. This time I got more questions and then ended up just building out the presentation to be a bit longer. I like to really explain things with nuance, with personalization. I'll aim to clip some of these up. If somebody, eventually I'll put this on the website and stuff too. I need to make a website. But if you found this to be helpful, and if you're still watching, I would really encourage or ask as a favor to share this if somebody's looking to lose fat and maybe is kind of confused or tired of listening to the same things, trying the same things and having no success. I'm aiming to help people in a different manner. Again, I used to be a lot bigger than I am, and I aim to help you get healthy. So I hope this was helpful. Again, you can reach me at jackfklink@gmail.com if you would like any help working together or have any questions about what I presented here today. Have a great evening and weekend, and I will see you soon.